Hey, everybody, I'm Mike.
I'm Bob.
I'm Tim.
And I'm James.
Yes.
And this is the Board Game Rundown. Welcome to Whiskey Wednesday, where we cover games from the ground up. Welcome back to the show, James Staley, publisher, designer, podcaster. What don't you do, James?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a lot of. I'm not on Jeopardy for one. Right?
Well, yeah. Sorry, guys. That's why we were late. Like James asked me about Jeopardy, and I figured we'd spare everybody who's heard it 100 times. But
that's so cool.
I was
now they don't get to mark it off their bingo card.
Yeah, right. Now they can. So we're late. It's my fault because I was yakking about that stuff. But awesome. I'm very excited to have James here. He is, if you don't know, and you should, he is in the middle of a Kickstarter game for this bad boy right here. It is the sequel to, right? It's fair to call it a sequel, right? But it's different.
It's fair. Yeah, it's like I call it a standalone sequel. So it's a game that falls within the same narrative universe as Cities of Venus, but it's its own game. And so if you jump into it, you don't have to have played or had any exposure to the to any of Cities of Venus universe. You can just jump in and start playing that game. But we have a connective kind of tissue, the narrative tissue that we have across all of our games that bring it together in this whole kind of Cities of Venus universe, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We're pretty excited. We're mid-campaign right now. We're at like 70,000 Canadian. I don't know what that is in US because the dollar is all over the map. But yeah, we're very excited. 2 or 3.5 times our funding goal so far, and still halfway to go. So it's exciting.
And you funded pretty quick, which is always a relief, so.
Yeah, anybody. This is our 8th campaign. So for anyone that's done a campaign before, it is very trying on your stress levels. And as soon as it's over, you're like, man, I don't know if I'll ever do that again. It's so stressful. But yeah. And then 2 weeks later, it's like having a kid, right? You're like, let's have another, right? Let's do another campaign. But yeah, we were very, very blessed to fund in the first 90 minutes. We did that on the first Cities of Venus campaign, but this one, we actually had double what the funding goal was. So it is the fastest funding we've ever done. And that is 100% due to the VIPs we've had as part of the program and just some of the fans of the Cities of Venus universe that we've kind of built up along the way. So we went into this feeling pretty good, and you never know till you hit that go live button. So, and there we are.
Yeah, that's great though, man. And that's a testament to not only the hard work and everything that you've put in and the following you've built, but also to the quality of the games you guys are putting out over there. And I say that as a fan of several Tim Robot games. So it's not just blowing smoke or suck it up to you. Because Spencer's not here, but I think everybody else liked Cities of Venus. And then we did really like Cities of Venus Survivors, as you could see in our video when we played it.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, your videos always make me laugh. So that was a good intro to that one as well. Thank you so much for that. That was cool. Yeah, this is with Cities of Venus Survivors. We got an add-on for this one, which is Dust Reclamation, which people can buy. It's a standalone trick-taking game that falls within the same narrative universe. With these 2 games, that puts us at 12 games in the market as a company. So pretty excited on that milestone now that we've crossed 10 games, which I think for a small publisher like ourselves, that's a milestone, and it feels pretty good to kind of look at my shelf. And when you see a lot of games, it's like, oh wow, those are ones that we did all those, right? Like that's something that kind of makes you proud. It's a nice little moment.
No, you should be. It is no small feat, right? To have such a library, expansive library of games for just, very small publisher.
Yeah, it is. We're literally a company of one. Like I have my brother is also my co-designer on a lot of the games, especially the Cities of Venus universe. He's a co-designer of that. And, but to kind of run this as a one-man show, it is a lot of work. And I know that, one of the things I do is I have a podcast, which is the Board Game Binge podcast. Tim, you've been on it. And, in that podcast, we interview a different publisher usually every week. And talking to a lot of publishers out there, I think most people don't realize that most of the companies in this industry are 1 to 3 people.
It's shocking.
1 to 3.
It's shocking.
Well, even the ones you might think are larger are like 1 to 3 people, or it's one guy who's bolted on a couple of people to kind of come in and out, kind of on a project by project basis, but aren't necessarily, owners of the company or core to the company. So, knowing that I'm kind of in that same kind of field as those, it brings me solace in knowing that, okay, this is something we can keep going with. And you can look to these others at, in their business models and see how they come together and reach out to that network and say, hey, I'm having this issue or that issue, what would you guys do in this case? Or vice versa. I'm now finding I'm at a position I'm starting to actually pay back the other way, right? Where people ask me for advice and I'm able to say, hey, this is who you might want to talk to for this, or someone might reach out. I had someone reach out the other day saying, hey, I like the production value of your game. Who's making it?
I like that side by side.
What was that?
I like that side by side like that with the
Yeah. So this is something that it's funny, that box right there, right? And Timmy, you had held it up at the beginning there. This kind of premium box. This is something when we did the Cities of Venus campaign that wasn't even part of the campaign. It was something we added on after we were done. We were at Essen and we were talking to some of the manufacturers there, and we came across this box. Yeah, it opens up. It's got an inside panel that opens up as well. It's got a metal disc on the front. That Venus on the front's actually made of metal, so it won't warp. This is the hard thing, is
trying to not dump it.
Yeah, I know.
Trying to not dump it.
Can't even handle it.
I'm so little. I'm just a tiny guy.
Yeah, I always have trouble doing that as well on camera. But that box we actually added on when the campaign was done. So we just ate the cost of it. And, people are saying to us, like, why would you do that? Because it kind of wiped out any profit we had. But for me, I really wanted to make sure we built this universe the right way and start off with a really, really strong presence in terms of the quality that we are going to set the tone kind of going forward, right? So we're doing that again with Cities of Venus Survivors. The copy you guys have there, this telescoping box. This is the 1 to 4 player box, but the 1 to 6 player, and I know yours is a 6-player version, but we're actually going to put the 1 to 6 player version in that same black box that you held up.
Oh, yeah.
So, Bob, when you said you saw the side-by-side image, our intention is for usually people that go to the premium level are into the lore, right? Like they want, they're in, right? They want to be part of this universe. And for me, I want them to have the experience that when they look at their shelf, they'll have at some point in a couple of years, 4 Chronicles beside each other, Chronicle 1 to 4, numbered like that, and it'll look like a nice set on their shelf. That's the same reason why Time Splicers, which I don't know if you guys know anything about Time Splicers, which is part of the universe as well. This is Chronicle A. Yeah, there you go, right? So the idea is that these would be on the little mini games would be on the shelf as well beside those Chronicles. So they all look like one big family. So that's kind of the intent there. And, as you know, we do inside lid printing is standard in our games. We make sure linen finish on the cards, spot UV in the box. Like these aren't like stretch goals. These are things we just do because we want to put our best foot forward. And for me, I know that and this started about 4 campaigns ago where we made the conscious decision to say, you know what, no more stretch goals. We're done. Mm-hmm. Adds way too much complexity to your game. It adds more time to the delivery on the end because then you have to go and kind of figure out what you added on during the campaign. And there was this trend in the industry where a lot of these manufacturers were taking stuff out just to give it back as stretch goals during the campaign. And if you're going to do it anyways, you might as well put it in, right? Because you could set like a target. Well, what if you smash that goal? Well, now you got to come up with more stretch goals. Or what if you fall short and you're going to do it anyways? Well, now you have to come up with an excuse to your backers of why all of a sudden you're going to throw it in when you didn't hit that goal, right? So it's this weird kind of dance and kind of like that drug you kind of get hooked into that you got to keep doing every campaign. And, we just wanted to kind of cut off and say enough is enough. We're just going to put the best foot forward right out of the gate. And you're either with us or you're not. And you're not with us, that's totally cool. Every game isn't for everyone. And,
right.
We want to service the people that kind of buy into our vision. And those who interact with us know we're very interactive. I've had, because I'm working usually all the time, I'll have somebody will ping me on something and they'll get a response back like within minutes. And like, whoa, wait a second. I expected somebody to get back to me so quickly. Wow. And then we'll end up having like a conversation back and forth. Because for me, I find that you gotta, having that interaction with the backers is the lifeblood of your brand, right? And without kind of the backers, this isn't really going anywhere. So, you really want to make sure you nurture that garden and keep it growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you've cultivated a pretty good community over there. You don't fund that fast if you haven't. So I left this question up because you were on a roll and I didn't want to mess with you.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody, just so you know, in case you missed it, like the topic tonight is ask James questions about game design and crowdfunding and things like that.
Anything you want.
He's an open book. So Carlos, he wants to know, what design principles do you prioritize when creating a new board game? And I'm going to post the next question, and when you're done, we'll move on to the next one.
For me, I think that there's really two pieces of that. It depends on what direction you're talking about specifically. So design principles as in actually creating the game itself, or is it design principles in terms of, the production or the development of the game. So I think I just covered the development of the game of kind of what we look for.
I think you did.
And throwing is whatever, get as much in there as you can at a that you can quite frankly afford. In terms of my approach, I know a lot of companies or a lot of designers will approach a game from a perspective of, they try to work out the mechanisms or mechanics. Some people say mechanics, some people say mechanism, the mechanics of the game. And then from there, then they'll decide on a theme. For me, what I found the most success we've had is when I start with a theme, right? So I start with an idea, right? So if I take garden geckos, right? So Gecko Bob, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he does.
That's what we're saying here.
My first question.
Well done. I gotta throw this out. Everyone can see that this looks just like Bob. In case it
does.
Here's the thing. I love it. So, so if you take Garden Gecko as an example, I knew I wanted to do a tile placement game, but I didn't really know much more than that. And so that idea kind of germinated from, okay, I want a tile placement game. I want something that has really good chunky wooden components, something that's going to be cute. What's an animal that I haven't seen or creature I haven't seen yet in the market? And I started thinking about geckos, right? Well, I haven't really seen anybody do any geckos yet. And then that leads to, I like alliteration in a lot of my game titles, right? So garden geckos, you got the double G's. And then from there, then I started building, okay, what's this tile thing going to look like? And thematically, those geckos got to eat bugs, obviously. Okay, now what's the bug component of these tiles? How are and then I start getting to these questions with myself. It's almost like a puzzle. I start trying to figure that out. Often I'll design a lot of it even in my head when I'm laying in bed. And then the next day I'll come and start saying, okay, now let me put on paper what I was just thinking about or dreaming about all night, right? So that's how I personally approach it. But not every designer does that. People take different approaches, and it's really what kind of works best for you. I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've taken a mechanism first and then like design kind of an engine or a game and then kind of layer something on top.
Sure. Okay. So Steph's question, and then he will follow up in the morning because he is on the other side of the world. What was your inspiration for Survivors of Venus? God,
how much time do we got here, guys?
Well,
I got to crack this beer open for this one. So we're drinking Collingwood Lazy Beer, microbrewed blonde. We'll see what this tastes like. So Cities of Venus. You know what? This has actually happened to me a couple times where I'm going down the YouTube rabbit hole. And this is now, I think, about 5.5 years ago. I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I came across this video where there were these scientists that were saying, why are we going to Mars? We should be going to Venus. And the whole video was their case for why Venus makes more sense than Mars. So I'll give the snapshot of what that is. Going to Mars, 2/3 the gravity of Earth. You go there. If you're staying there for more than a year, you're probably not coming back because your bones will atrophy and your organs will atrophy. And there's actually been a movie about a kid that was born on Mars and couldn't come back to Earth. You'll die when you come back. 2, there's no atmosphere there, so there's no atmospheric pressure. So you're going to have to be in a pressurized suit, pressurized habitats when you're on the surface. There's no cloud cover. There's no magnetic magnetosphere. So there's nothing protecting you from the radiation. So you're getting bombarded with radiation nonstop. The journey to get there is further out in the it's one planet out in the solar system. So It takes about 6.5 months to get there, but you can only launch once every 2 years when our orbits are kind of aligned, right? On the flip side, if you look at Venus, I'll go in reverse. It's one planet in. So our planets line up about every 9 months. So your launch window is more frequent. It takes about 2.5 months to get there. So you're not going to be in deep space or in our solar system space, outside of the protective shield, magnetic shield of Earth for as long. When you get there, it's the same size as Earth. It's almost identical. It's like 98% the same size as Earth. So in terms of gravity, it's the same. So going there and coming back, not an issue. I'm going to put a caveat on the next couple of points. That the atmospheric pressure is the same as sea level on Earth. The temperature is the same as Earth. Again, at sea level, if say in Panama, where it's between about 26 and 32. The only caveat to that is you have to be 50 kilometers above the surface. At that level, it is it's the most Earth-like environment in our entire solar system. You even have enough clouds above you that you're protected from the solar radiation. If there's a leak in the habitat, well, you go out and you patch it. You got tons of time. It's not like a rapid decompression because you have atmospheric pressure that's holding everything together. The only caveat is you can never go to the surface because the pressure at the Terra level is about something like 4 times the deepest part of our ocean, the Mariana Trench. 4 times that the pressure. So you'd be pancaked. Any probe that's ever been sent there have not lasted longer than an hour and a half. There's only been, I think, 3 that have actually been on the surface. There's only been 2 that have taken pictures. They were both Russian in the 70s. And so there's only like a hand. I think there's like 6 or 7 photographs of the surface of Venus. It's a very, very harsh environment. There is acidic clouds that it rains. And so you'd have to coat everything in materials to protect against that. Clothing wear would have to protect that. You have to have a breathing apparatus. But ambient air, like breathable air, like the mix that us humans need, just happens to be very buoyant at that 50-kilometer level up. So you could actually support a city on that. And the Russians had actually put together a lot of plans and concepts of how we could create literally floating cities that would float in the clouds around the planet Venus. Oh, wow. So that's the rabbit hole I went down. And I thought, wow, that'd be a cool game. you got terraforming Mars. Why is nobody talking about Venus? And so the next day I was talking to my brother Adam about this. And I said, dude, we should create a game on this. That would be so cool. And he geeks out over that science stuff as well, just like I do. And him and I just start going back and forth on just concepts and ideas. And I was playing, have you ever, it's called Chai or Chai Tea. You guys ever heard that game?
I'm aware of it, but I have not played it. Yeah.
A lot of controversy, steep games. And I think they're out of business because they after their second Kickstarter, they stopped.
They had some issues.
Some issues, but I had that original game and I was playing, and in there they have like a market. It has nothing to do with science. You're making tea, but they had a central market of cards, which a lot of games do. But we just happened to be playing that game while we're talking about this other one, and that's where we came on the idea of, well, what if Earth was sending supplies, and they were sending immigration to Venus in the form of canisters, and they were kind of coming through the clouds. What if that was a mechanism where, like, people are having to grab these canisters, and maybe we could do that in the way of placing cards on the table. And then it just kind of built out from there. And because we love cool stuff, we're like, well, I want it to be like it was when I was a kid. Like, I want to actually build this city.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't want to just like grab cards and kind of put them on a tableau on a table. Like, I want to upgrade a department by putting the card in the seat and actually upgrade the department, like actually plug different departments into the city. And that's how these quad layer boards, which I think we're the only ones in the industry have done this, kind of came out of that.
The only ones I've seen.
And they're super cool, as you know, you've seen them, right? So,
yes.
And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever worked on yet in this industry, is getting those boards to work. It was incredibly difficult. It was almost a year of back and forth in manufacture, just to get them where they worked well consistently, weren't warping all crazy and stuff. And as a result, they're very thick, right? So they're probably some of the thickest player boards people are going to ever have in a game. So that's why the box is so heavy when you have 6 of them in the box, but it worked out well for us. So that was the inspiration behind Cities of Venus.
There we go. Now here's the thing, is they asked what the inspiration behind Survivors of Venus was.
Was it Survivor? Oh my God. All right.
But hey, listen, the cities, you need.
Hey, I just laid the groundwork. I just laid the platform here. Okay.
I
built the city. Now let's build the story on top of that.
Yeah. You needed all that context.
Yeah. So in that context, in the Cities of Venus, the first game, we had this one component where you're sending miners down to the surface. And it's kind of a one-way trip. People are constantly dying in that first game. It literally comes with 150 meeples. These little space guys, right? Like these little guys here.
V-Knots.
V-Knots.
Yeah, there you got the terminology. So there's 150 of those in the game. So you're constantly discarding them because they're dying like constantly, right? And part of that game is you're mining for resources. So you're putting those guys in a mech and you're sending them down to the surface. It's a one-way trip. We had written these stories about which we called Chronicles of Venus as part of that first campaign to kind of tie narratively into what was happening in the actual game itself, right? Talking about different events happening and going through, what it was, an event happens in a department or the International Innovation Station, a piece breaks off and hits the city. And so all these little stories. And one of the stories we had was one of the miners on his way down, his ascent thrusters fail. And he realizes it's a one-way trip. And as part of that, he decides he's going to do the heroic thing and try to mine as much Venite, which is the mineral you're trying to mine on the surface, before he loses power and dies, right? And the story kind of ends with, you can hear people over the speaker kind of cheering him from the city that, he put it on the balloon and sent the sent balloons up to send the resources up. And he did everything he could to the last second he could. And so this idea we had been kind of working on behind the scenes was, well, what if in this universe you had a game where you could actually be that guy in that mech?
Oh, right on. Yeah.
And you're trying to, and maybe there's survivors, maybe some of the canisters, like in that first game, you're grabbing canisters that are in the market that are kind of coming through the clouds and it forms a market. There you are right there. You're grabbing. Well, the ones you don't take fall to the surface. Well, what if those had people in them? Right. And then that was the idea of, okay, well, some of those survivors make it to the surface. Well, maybe they don't die. Maybe this heroic guy on the surface, maybe he can go and find those survivors somehow. And that was kind of what led into that whole story and quite frankly, this game where, and at the time I was playing a lot of like kind of dice chuckers, right? So I love Favor of the Pharaoh, if anybody's ever played.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorite dice chuckers. Big fan of Fantastic Factories. I mean, just that is the creme de la creme, one of my favorite games. And also I was playing a lot of polyominoes. I was playing, Baron Park is a big inspiration going into this game as well. And so, but I'd never seen those two mechanics kind of combined. And as Adam and I were kind of working through this, we said, we want the dice chucking to be you actually operating the mech, right? So it's almost like you're doing the controls of the mech is through the dice manipulation. And then, well, how does that mech then get to go find survivors? Well, some kind of a topographical map. Wouldn't that be cool if that topographical map was the polyominoes? So you're unlocking exploration. So we call them exploration tiles. So it's your mech moving along, you're exploring the map, trying to get to where these survivors are, trying to get to more resources, which then help you further join your team and your mech to help you manipulate dice further and operate your mech better. And then that kind of leads to the end of the game, which inspired by Favor of the Pharaoh at the very end, how that plays out, where everyone has kind of a final, for lack of a better word, roll off, right? On how you built your engine up. This one here is literally the engine you've built. And you go into that final thing based on your team and hopefully have a stronger mech to be able to, win that launch sequence. And what we found was that in all the games we play, often we inject our own personal biases into those games, our personal likes and dislikes. And, that's why I'm never offended if somebody doesn't like one of my games, because the game is very reflective of the kind of things I like and I look for. And I'm totally cool if it doesn't match what they're looking for. For me, I like the idea of people having a chance right up to the very end.
Yeah.
I really dislike games where you're halfway in and then I know I'm just going along for the ride now because I already know Bob over here is going to, he's been rolling, he's been doing well and, he's got it. And like, we're going to now just talk.
Waiting for me to win.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to win. Right. And so for this game and all the games we have, quite frankly, is we always want to have that opportunity for people to still have that chance till the end. So if you do a mad rush to the end in this particular game, you can trigger the end quicker than it. You can, rush it to trigger the end, get that fifth kind of fuel canister. But in that rush, you're not building up the strength of your team, right? You're not mining the resources you need. They're going to help you manipulate the dice pips at the end. So you might trigger the end, and you're gonna have more dice than everyone else to roll, but you're gonna have no way to manipulate them other than just the couple options you have on your board. Someone else that takes more of a balanced approach, who does get a full team going in and does make sure their mineral bay is full going in, are going to have a much stronger chance of actually being able to manipulate and get the best sequence possible. So that's why we did that. We don't want to ever have a game where it kind of runs away on you and then you're kind of out right halfway in.
Yeah, I will say, so just to kind of give everybody, the spiel, not that James couldn't because it's his game and will do better than I did, but in our experience though with it is one of the things. So a couple things, right? The simultaneous play is great. We joked in like the opening of the video because Bob and I always took our turns way faster than Mike. So we were always waiting on Mike. And so it's sort of a joke with us that we were like shaking our dice. And that was like our passive aggressive way to tell Mike, like, hurry up, take your turn. Right. Like we're just, we're ready. We're ready when you are, buddy. Like, let's go. But yeah, the way that you build everything up and all of the way you get those different cards that give you all the dice mitigation also was really cool because you feel like you've got a lot of agency, at the end because you want as many of those or the V-Knights that you can like pip up or down, you want to mess with the dice, different ways and that you've got the engineers that can give you rerolls and plus and minuses and things like that. So yeah, it felt like it felt very even at the end. Like it really did come down to a roll off for us when we were playing it, and it was exciting. It was actually it was really interesting because it's I love like we play a lot of worker placement games, and long grindy Euros and.
Yeah.
Man, they suck if it's 2 hours in, you still got an hour left and, you are not going to win. It's like, that's a bummer.
That simultaneous play, again, I think that comes from I think I have I must be attention deficit because I find sometimes when I'm in a game and I'm waiting and it's like, good God, is it like, how much longer is it till I can do something, right? Like those games that's not my game. Some people love that. For me, I gotta be doing something. And that's what I love about like Fantastic Factories again, because everyone is doing something. Earth is another great example of this. Inside Up Games did a fantastic job on Earth. Again, it plays to me better than Wingspan because it's not turn, like everyone has something you can do on your turn, right? So even if it's someone else is the first player, yes, they get priority. They can do more on their turn, but everyone else is still doing something on their turn as a result of that action. And it just keeps even if the game goes 2 hours, it feels like it's moving along much faster, right? When you're constantly doing something. So that's why we put exactly. And that's why we put these little turn markers in there that you had shown in that image, which is once you're done your turn, you flip it over. Once everyone's at the same color, you can move to the next turn. That keeps the turn from getting out of order. So someone's not overbuilding their mech and because they've raced ahead of other people. So everyone's kind of building at the same pace.
Right.
But it also allows you to, if you want, and you have newer players at the table, you can wait for each person to do their thing and observe. You don't have to all go at the same time, but you certainly can, right? So it adapts very easily to different play styles. And I see Dave just put a question in there, like, how's it play at 2? The best way I can explain 2, and I think it was in one of the videos we had on our Kickstarter page is with, I think it was Billy Indiana that had mentioned it in his video. No, sorry. It's Brains on Games. I mentioned it. He said that it plays very different based on the player count. Okay. So at a lower player count, it's a race to get the engineer that you want to get because there's always less engineers than there are players, right?
Yes.
So if there's 4 players, there's 3 of each engineer. If there's 2 players, there's 1 of each engineer, and there's 6 engineers. So you're really trying to get to those engineers because you want the one maybe that gives you up and down 1 pip. Maybe somebody else wants the one that gives you the opposite side of the die. That's a very different play experience and strategy, quite frankly, than when you're playing at a higher player count, like a 6-player count, where it's, there's a limited number of polyomino. We got now 5 of each engineers. So as long as I'm not really trailing, I can probably get the engineers I want. But man, I may not be able to get the polyomino shapes I want because there's a fixed number of those, and those are going to run out faster. So it kind of, I like that when you have different, when things play different based on the play, the play count. Solo play is same thing, right? Like the solo play is, again, mechanically it plays similar to the other games, but it's more of a win. It's not like you're getting off the surface. It's
Right.
You could fail, right? And people could still die because you might not save everybody, right? So it's either a pass fail, then getting to a certain score, and that score depends on how is your final launch sequence. Did you get to everybody? Oh, and guess what? We're going to limit the number of polyomino shapes you have to actually get to those people in the first place. So now it becomes almost a bit puzzly of, okay, I got to make sure I'm very efficient on how I use those pieces as well.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
The beer is fantastic, Trevor. Thank you.
I saw
the important questions.
Like Tim, you skipped a question.
Well, you know, I was skimming. I was skimming for the design questions. There we go.
Oh, did we miss one? What was this one? How do you design games to remain engaging through multiple plays? Wow, that's an amazing question. I think the gauge for me is I talk about this a lot on my podcast, is there's certain designers that will go and they'll just sit with other designers in like these prototyping events, right? Like Unpub, for instance, at Origins and so forth. And those are very helpful because you can get really insightful. I had Scott Brady give me feedback actually on this one when I was at Origins, because I actually playtested at Origins, and having other people that are designers give you that feedback is very, very helpful, because they can help you kind of work through some of the math-based mechanisms and how the interaction mechanism, which maybe a casual player aren't necessarily going to be able to articulate that as well. However, for me, it's important to spend as much time as you can also with casual players. So people that aren't game designers, that really just come at it with a blank slate. They just like to play. They like to play board games. So I'll bring it to like meetups and things like that. And so the gauge I always ask is, did the person have fun? Were we going through the motions, or afterwards are they like, wow, that was a good game? The real tell is if you pull that game out again a couple weeks later, do those people kind of quietly kind of sneak over to a different table?
Oh, right.
Or do they want to come back to your table? And if they're not coming back to your table, I always sit down. I'll ask them. I'll say, hey, no feedback is bad feedback. I'm just here to learn. What is it about this that didn't want you to come back and play again?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a replayability, or I kind of had my fill, there's nothing there that kind of got me engaged, then I know I got to do my homework to kind of tweak that to get something in there that's going to hook them more. One thing we had on this game originally was there was no dice. Polyomino placement. Each polyomino had a mineral value on it, and then every round you would collect the minerals based on how you explored. And then your mineral count would keep growing as you go, and that was the engine. And you could use those minerals to buy other larger polyominoes. The challenge with that is we found that you're sitting there spending so much time counting. Okay, I got 6, 7, I got 13, 14, 15. Okay, 16 minerals this time. Okay, now next round, I got to count all my dots. How many minerals I get to collect this time? And it became a chore.
Oh, sure.
Right? And if you have a chore and you're playing a game, that's not fun. So we literally blew it up and said, okay, we got to figure this out again. And that was a night when I just literally happened to, oh, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Dave. I had just happened to play Fantastic Factories. And my brother and I were playing that, and right away the light bulb went off in our head at the same time, because we were talking about, there's something broken. What can we fix on this Survivors game? And that was it. We're like, let's make it the dice, and let's make it the mech is what's propelling forward. And once we figured that out, then that became more engaging. And then the replayability we found kicked in.
Get up here.
That's crazy to imagine that game. It is so dice driven that it started without dice. It's like, what?
Yeah. But sometimes you have to fail, right? And you got to fail fast. And there's a book out there, I think it's called Fail Fast, but it really is like, I'm not afraid of failure. And I'm not afraid of very candid and direct feedback. Because
you've got to be thick skinned, right?
Yeah.
You're going to put stuff out there.
Let me give you a story.
I'm here. Let's go.
So you've got time splicers there, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I was at an event, I think it was about 2 years ago now, and we're designing that game. And I was doing a play test, and I won't say where it was or who it was, but afterwards, I'm like, I always have my pad of paper. I said, I'd like to get your feedback. And they're like, well, you sure you want our feedback? I said, absolutely. Just give it to me. I want it. Hey, how's it going, Portland? And so the person looked at me and said, well, what's the point?
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, let me write that down. What's the point? Okay, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by what's the point? And they said, well, you're just kind of moving your meeple here and there, and just cards are moving and cards are clearing, but like, nah, I don't get it. I'm like, okay. Anybody else any feedback? And then another person said, why did you decide to break the fundamental principles of game design?
Well,
I'm like, okay. So what do you mean by that? Like, help me understand. Like, I'm not really sure I understand. They said, well, I've been watching a lot of blogs. I've been reading a lot of books. And, this one person, I read this one that said it's really important to constantly have progression. And there's a couple times when I'm playing here, it felt like I didn't have a move. Like, I'm just collecting cards, waiting until I get the right card to be able to move my piece. And I'm kind of stuck. And it wasn't really fun. Sorry. And I'm like, hey, I'll take it all. Now, me 5-6 years ago, that would have been crushing to get that kind of feedback, and that probably would have ruined my week.
Oh, sure.
And I was with my niece, right, who's a game designer as well, and I mean niece, but she's 40, and on the way home, she's like, "Wow, that was like so rude." I'm like, "No," I go, "You know what? Let me think about it." I go, "I think they were right. The delivery wasn't great, but fundamentally, what they were getting at was there's something here that's broken where you can get stuck." And then you are just drawing cards until you get the right card to be able to move. And that's not really great. There's no real agency in that. And then it starts to feel more luck-based and random, and then you're actually strategic. And then that's when we created the Nexus in that game. So you got the Nexus card off to the side where you can jump into the Nexus at any point, 2-card penalty, but then you can jump back and spawn a new timeline. And so what came out of that direct feedback was a fix that fixed the game, quite frankly, right? But you have to be able to have that thick skin to be able to say, okay, let me get to the underlying. What's this person saying? Like, there's like, what do they mean? Let me try to translate what they're saying here, without getting upset, right? And that's so hard for game designers to do, and it takes a long time to get to that point, right?
I mean, we were talking to Martin Wallace a couple of years ago at Origins, and he was hanging out in the Unpub Hall, and somebody, he was playing these people's games, that aren't, they're doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And he asked them, do they want feedback? And the person said no. And he's like, well, I guess just fuck me then. That's what he told us. He's like, you don't want my advice, and what are you doing in there? Like, you would think in that situation, if you're getting people to play your game, I don't know why you wouldn't want
at least
feedback. Yeah, whatever you do with it is what you do with it. But
it's a funny industry, like having gone to a lot of these, there's kind of two groups of people, right? There's the people that go in and they're looking for confirmation. They're not looking for feedback. They're looking for confirmation, right? They think they've got it, and they're just waiting for people to check off the boxes. Everybody likes it. Okay, I'm going to go to market. Oh, you don't like it? Okay, let me go figure out what's wrong with it. I'm not really looking for feedback.
Yeah.
And then there's others that are looking for feedback. The caution I give to people, because there's one here in Toronto that they run, and I was going, and I stopped going to it because I would go and I would see the same people 4 years later showing the same game to the same group. And it's like, okay, you have to pull yourself. If you're not getting new and fresh feedback, you're not going to be able to progress. And what I found is in some cases, some designers will go into these events with this mission to give people as much feedback as they can to turn it into something that they want to play themselves.
Oh, sure.
And I ran into this at Unpub 2 years ago. I was at Origins, and I was doing this play test, and I can't remember the person's game. It was cool. It was about birds, and it was like a tableau game, and you're, a row and columns are moving at a time. You're trying to match up different colors of birds and things like that. It was a cool little game. So he goes to feedback, and the person across the table from me starts like just going, well, I should do this, this, and this if you consider this. And they start going like crazy. And I could see them like going, they really were trying to turn into a different game. And I just said like, hey, no offense, but, and I turn to the designer, I go, what kind of market are you trying to target? Like, who are you trying to target? Are you going for heavy gamers? Are you going for casual gamers? Is this a start to game night? Is this like a warm-up game? Is it a filler? Like, who's your market? Right? And he's like, yeah, actually, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just something that's kind of casual, quick, 10 minutes, something warm up at the beginning of the night. I go, okay, ignore that feedback that person just gave you, because they're trying to turn into something super deep, super crunchy that a game designer would enjoy because they played a billion games and they need new stimulus. If you're going for a casual gamer, and then back to the person across the table, what feedback do you have for him that would make this better for casual gamers? Like, what is it he's missing? And then they change their feedback. They're like, oh, well, in that case, I would just do this, this, and this.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's crazy. That's something. It's so weird. You don't even. It's so easy to kind of take some of that stuff for granted.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even consider that. I have to imagine there's people, when you say, what are you trying to accomplish? They're like, I don't know, make a game. Like, they don't even necessarily, like, especially early on, maybe not even have a market in mind. They just think they've got an idea for a game and they're just throwing stuff together.
Usually if they have, but on that, then the market's probably themselves.
Oh, sure. Right.
Right. Because the ideas come from somewhere.
Right.
And it's probably come from something they enjoy or something they've played, and they had inspiration off of something they played. And now this is going to be something that they think would be a cool idea, but it's usually in the vein of something they would probably enjoy themselves. So, okay, now what are the kind of games you typically play? Right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Who are the people you play with? Who's your gaming group? And that can help them kind of, position who they're going after. So there's usually there. Maybe they haven't thought about it consciously, but underlying, I think the answer is always there.
And what's funny is, like, we go to meetups, we go to people's game days, we have, family game days, we have our own game days. And it always blows me away. And I have to remind myself that, because, right, everybody's different than I am, is when people are like, oh, I don't want to play that, that's not my kind of game. It's like, I play all kinds of games, and when I find one that, like, it might be in a style that I normally don't like, that kind of game, I want to play it because maybe that's the one, that is like, oh no, I usually don't like that kind of game, but I do enjoy, this one. But then, there's people that are just flat out like, no thanks. And I'm like, what? Like, it just blows my mind. And I have to, like, pump the brakes, remember, like, hey, not everybody's the, eager beaver, that I am all the time.
I think I get that, right? Like, I think that, like, Take That games is not a mechanic I super love. And
oh, sure.
That comes from my childhood, right? and just fighting with my siblings, and it going to a place that was not fun, right? It went to it became a battle of fights and anger and hurt feelings and things like that. I typically avoid Take That things. And so if there's a Take That game, if it's a game I haven't played before, or something that has maybe a mechanism that I'm not familiar with, I'll jump in. I'll force myself to play, because I'm always trying to learn something new. Like, every week when I'm at meetup, I'll ask people, what did they bring? If it's something I've never heard of, I'll ask if I can play, if I can join their table, because I want to, the more games you're exposed to, the better you're going to get at designing. But I do get that if there's certain things that are going to make you not have enjoyment out of that experience, it's not necessarily a bad thing to say, I'm going to take a pass, I'm going to go at this other table, right? No, I wouldn't say don't take your box and go home.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right, but if you have options, maybe gravitate towards the one you're going to enjoy the most, right?
I'd also take the time constraint into consideration too, right? So, like, oh, it's 20 minutes. Okay, I'm usually not into those kind of games, but, like, I'll play a social deduction game if it's going to take 15, 20 minutes. But to sit there for an hour and a half or something like Blood on the Clock Tower, I'm like, is this going to end anytime soon?
Yeah. Yeah, my rule is I won't play anything that it's over an hour and a half.
Yeah.
See, go on. No,
I was
go.
just going to say, just very quickly, because for me, like, my playtime is I run a local meetup group, right? And it's in a public restaurant and so forth. And, we have anywhere from 15 to 20 people come, right? Each week. And I know that because it's open to the public, there might be new people coming. And because I'm running the event, I got to be the person that welcomes them, right? Makes them feel like they're, hey, these are all friends, and these are people who are going to want you to join their group. And, this is a good way for you to socialize. I can't get stuck into a 2-hour game,
right,
where I can't leave, right? So I usually try to go 45 minutes to an hour and a half if possible. That allows me to play more games and get more game experience. but at the same time, give myself availability to
Frees you up to host.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I get that. And again, kind of like Bob said, though, right? Like there's unless it's like a review game, if there's like a 3-hour game and it's not like appointment, like, hey, come over, I want to play this game.
Yeah.
I tend to try to get some other shorter games in, not because I don't like longer games, because I'll definitely, jump in and dig in, but like you got
to know it's coming.
I got to know it's coming.
Yeah, you almost got to kind of prep yourself, right? Like you're ready for game day, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes,
Mike,
sir.
I will have Axe and Allies set up. We're going to be playing it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Play, Shogun or Samurai Swords. I know it's had 2 different names.
Yeah.
When I was younger, and that was an entire day, right?
Oh yeah.
Very, very long game. I don't have, unfortunately, I don't know if it's the patience, the attention span, or just the desire to play games that long anymore. Like really, I've honed into my zone of being hour, 2-hour tops, nice contained, lots of action, a lot of stuff happening. If I'm going to spend that much time, I'd rather go do an escape room. If I'm going to do something super.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, again, though, you're constantly engaged, in an escape room. I will say there's a game that when it's not out yet, it's coming to Kickstarter this spring, and it's a World War II war game, A Song for War. I mean, that game is an 8-hour game that feels like 2 hours. But I mean, it's a long,
like 3.5.
You and I did. We played quick.
Yeah,
we played quick, but that game could
take 6 to 8 hours if you're.
It could take 6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
And I have the best time playing it. I absolutely love playing it.
Big swings, yeah.
But it's very intense. But if we're rolling into like a game day and we're like,
by the way.
Yeah, like no, hell no, dude. I'd love to play that game, but I cannot. Yeah. I cannot. Like that. That very well, when that like shows up on people's doorsteps, could be like my game of the year. But that's not I'm just like, oh, hey, let's play Flip 7, or do you want to play A Song for War? Well, sorry guys, I'm going to play Flip 7 because then I can do other things too, versus, like just write me a letter, let me know how your day went while I go play this game.
Should play some Wild Side.
No doubt. Yeah, there's another really good game that's not out yet. But anyways, Carlos has another question, a design question. Yeah. So challenging, what's the most challenging aspect of designing balanced board game mechanics?
I think that's a good one. There's different approaches to this, right? So there's some designers that become obsessive compulsive about the balance. So much for they'll put into like Python computer programming and they'll show like, here's our here's our play curves and so forth to show that it's perfectly balanced. I don't go that far. For me, it's a lot of plays. Definitely I keep track of score every time we're playing. And the challenge for me is getting to the sweet spot of having a point spread that's fairly consistent every game.
Okay.
And not too wide. So it doesn't bother me as much if one person has like, say on average, the scores are around like 26 and one person ends up with 10. That's fine. As long as the top 2 players are like 24 and 27, right? Like that's kind of what we aim for.
Mm-hmm.
It is incredibly difficult, right? Because it just takes constant playing. And then the challenge, to answer your question, of designing that balance is figuring out what is it that's creating the unbalance, right? And that answer is not always easy. And this is why I always prefer what's called iterative design. So, and I was working at, like my niece was working on Bunny Drops. I don't know if you guys have played that one. We'll maybe get one.
Not yet. I've got it right here.
Oh, you got Bunny Drops? Oh, sweet. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So when we were doing that one, every time we'd get a bunch of feedback from people, she'd write it all down and she'd be like, okay, so I need to change this, and this. I'm like, no, pick one thing and change it, because we have to see how that impacts the game. Because if you change 4 things, now you're guessing which of those 4 actually cause things to go out of whack.
It's that you need a control group, right? Like you gotta have, So
if you do iterative design, okay, I tweaked this one thing and this happened. Okay, now I tweaked this thing, now this happened. it's much easier for you to kind of, for lack of a better word, control how you get into balance, right? Sometimes you get lucky. I mean, sometimes you'll design something and then the balance just is kind of inherently there. That doesn't happen too often, but it can happen.
Sure.
So we just keep working at it. And I think for me, the challenge, again, back to your question, Carlos, is I'm a very impatient person, right? So as most designers are, they just want to get to it. Let's get this. It's good. Let's get to it. And at some point you do have to call it, right? It's kind of like when it's in the emergency room and the person, at some point you got to call it. Right. And for me, it's coming to what is that point where you call it, where you say we're balanced enough, right? Because if you don't, and you do get obsessive compulsive about it, you could be one of those people that 4 years later, same prototyping event, talk about the exact same game.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean,
right? Because they're pursuing perfection, they're not pursuing excellence. Right. And that's the difference. You want to pursue excellence. You're never going to perfection is impossible. Right. So you got to just pursue excellence, get as close as you can to making it really, really good. And realizing that the game is never going to be done. There's still stuff that pops up on games that, we did a couple of years ago where I'm like, if I ever do a reprint, I'll make a note. If I ever do a reprint, we're going to change that.
Sure.
We're going to change this. Survivors. Here's a perfect example. The one you guys have in your hands. We've made a change since you've got that rule book. The change we made was that, and some of this comes sometimes through the reviewers, is that final roll off. So you can get into a situation where one person has 6 dice and another person has 8 dice. And the person that has 8 dice is usually the person that initiated the launch sequence, right? So whoever initiates the launch sequence is going to go in with at least 1 more die than everyone else. If everyone else is sleeping at the wheel, they could go in with 2 extra dice than everyone else. You could run it if you let that person, and our thinking behind that was, okay, well, we want them to have the lack of the insight of the other people's rolls. So they're gonna roll their dice and they're gonna create the longest string of the same number as they can. If they know everyone else has got 6s, then they're going to go for 6s, but they might actually go for 2s and think that that's strong enough. So that was the thinking behind that, right? To say, okay, well, we want them to not have, they're already going in with advantage. I don't want to give them the further advantage by seeing what everyone else has rolled before they go. The challenge with that is that someone's got 6 dice and you've got 8 and you've created a 7-number sequence of 1s. That other guy might as well not even roll because they've already lost. Right. Buzzkill, not fun. So we changed that because we heard enough feedback from people, reviewers saying, it was great, but the one person they were out pretty much going into the roll off because as soon as we did a roll, we knew we had more dice than them. So that everyone has that fun experience, because that's the fun, is watching the people try to put together, right? Because at the end, it's not simultaneous, it's one at a time, seeing what they get. Okay, now I got to try to beat that person. So we've actually reversed that. The person with the least number of dice now is going to go first. And the person with the most dice who initiated the launch sequence is going to roll at the end. We found by doing that increased the enjoyment of the game. Because again, our intent was people are enjoying and feel like I got a chance right up to the very end. And I wanted to eliminate that buzzkill. And I had heard that too many times and talking with Adam, we're like, yeah, let's change that. I think it's for the best. So again, you're constantly tweaking things, right?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Then you just kind of keep stepping the bar up instead of setting it here. And this guy's like, well, there's no way I can get up there.
Exactly.
Right.
Or sucks, right? That's a buzzkill.
Yeah.
Right. It's a letdown. You go all that distance and then it's like, what's the point of I've already failed the launch sequence. I didn't even get to. And what we found in some of those groups is people would, let me see what I would have done anyways, because they still want to have that final roll. Right. So I didn't want to rob that experience from people. So that's why I made that change.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting. I think in our game, I do think Mike was short 1 die, wasn't he? Did he have 1 fewer die than us, Bob?
Yes.
So, so Mike couldn't roll, and then I was trying to beat Bob's roll,
Yeah.
And then Mike
I
was
had you guys beat until Bob took his turn back, and so I just put an asterisk on the W.
Yeah, no. See, what happened was I rolled my dice, and then I forgot you could use those other cards to manipulate. It's like, oh, I had 2 extra dice that I didn't manipulate because I had those extra cards that say, oh, you can spend those to pip the dice up and down, and that gave me more dice. So
Your engineer
took his turn.
correction.
After I
I
logged
was
the
winning.
play, correct.
I was winning, and Bob took his turn back because he couldn't handle the fact that I was winning.
No, it took me to realize that. Oh yeah, I forgot I can do that.
It sounds like a rematch is in the works. That's
Oh yeah, it's happening.
Oh yeah,
It's happening.
Definitely had Tim beat. But
No, you didn't, because you didn't have as many dice as I did. You had a higher number, but I had more dice. So you.
it doesn't
beat
matter.
my-
I didn't log a winner, so
Well, let me check my BG stats. According to my BG stats, I won.
Well, who's counting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike did have the higher die roll, but he had fewer dice. So
interesting. And what'd you
So-
have? Did you get 6s, 5s? What was your
I had 6s.
nice?
yeah,
I think I had 7 6s or something like that.
well, the thing was, you had at first you had all 2s. You had the max amount of.
I
No,
started at 6s, and then you went for 1s because you thought that when you rolled, you had a bunch of 1s, and it was easy for you to get like an extra die of 1s. And I was like, oh wait a minute, because you started using your cards.
So I had a higher straight than you. Well, then I had more dice that were
You
the
had
same
more
number
dice.
than
I was
you.
like, oh yeah, that's
what it
right.
was.
I had more dice. I just couldn't get them to 6s because I
Right.
forgot I could use my cards
So
to manipulate those dice.
He had a shorter sequence. I had a
Correct.
longer sequence with a
Of a
lower
lower
number. And then Bob's like, oh, well, hold on a second. I can
Yeah, it's like,
change.
oh, I forgot I could use those cards to manipulate it. That means I could have done another die and made it an extra one.
Well,
And so
here's another example. I just want to give you this of back to that balance question, because here's 2 other changes we made that came out of this. One is you'll notice that there's no up to, right? So there's one engineer card that brings your dice down by 2.
Right.
And you notice there's an auto 3 and there's an auto 4. There's no auto 5, like automatic 5, and there's no automatic 6.
Right.
And we had to introduce those because originally what we had was one that would go up 2, down 2. And we had a engineer that was an auto 6. And we had one that's an auto 5. But what we found is when it got to the final roll off, people were only going for 6s.
Oh, sure.
And it was usually 6s that would win. So again, it comes to balance. It's like, okay, that's great. We went through all this effort, but we're all just ending up at who can get to 6s first, right?
Right.
And it kind of pulled some of the fun out of it. So we're like, okay, well, what can we do? What can we adjust to get people to potentially win with all 2s or all 1s?
Yeah.
And that was a solution to do an automatic 4 and automatic 3 as engineer cards. So people are going to go in with those. So that might encourage them to try to go all 3s or all 4s and get rid of the going up 2 pips and only have it go down 2 pips and no rollovers.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was all
Key.
designed to prevent people from just going straight 6s every time they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that all gets back into the question that we had, which is, what's some of that challenge of balance? The challenge is a lot of playtime.
Well, I could tell you that those specific numbers felt very deliberate for those reasons, because it's a lot harder to pip up. You gotta spend a lot more resources to pip all the way up.
Yeah.
So no, it was just funny because it came down to like contentious at the end, only because Bob had misplayed his turn. And Mike's, doesn't matter if Mike was winning or not, because he had accidentally cheated by drawing an extra map tile and was building on a fifth tile.
A 5th map.
And we're like, what are you doing? And you're like,
what are you doing, dude? You
Mike's
have
like,
4. Tim said that. So that's
I
actually
did
what
say-
he got right. And then Mike just said
Anybody fill in their actual boards? Because that's part of it too, right?
I each filled
Bob
2
and I-
full boards.
Bob and I each filled in a couple boards, which
Yeah.
is what I think put us over, which triggered Endgame.
Yeah, it gives us the 2 of those things. Yeah.
But I'm very hit or miss with polyomino games, right? So some of them I love, and I even will count Cartographers as sort of a polyomino game because you're drawing the shapes in.
Yeah.
But like, I don't love Planet Unknown near as much as everyone else in this universe, and that's fine. I think some of it is because I've tried to play it more digitally than physically.
Yeah.
And I hate playing polyomino games digitally because I do a lot better when I can
Yeah,
You have a
can
hard
flip it
time with the
over and,
spatial when
yeah.
it's abstract.
Yeah, I need to do the spatial stuff in person, like
Tactically,
IRL, right? For my
Do you
brain.
play like Patchwork or anything like that?
Love Patchwork.
Yeah,
Love Patchwork.
Good.
I
Barren
think
Park?
Patchwork's great.
Have you played
I
Barren
haven't
Park?
played Barren Park, so
Barren Park is and that a big inspiration for us on the actual tiles. So
I
they
know that
have
listen out. I'll be right back.
they've got tiles as well where you're building out kind of your
Okay.
park and just placing polyominoes. And yeah, that I'm very much Isle of Cats, another example of this, right? Where I like those ones where you can take the piece, figure where to put it and go. I think I'm with you on Planet Unknown. I played it for the first time, quite frankly, a week and a half ago. Didn't super love it. Maybe I would on subsequent plays, but for me, I like kind of the puzzly aspect without too much negative impact, I guess, when it comes to polyominoes.
Well, so again, right, hit or miss. So when I find one that I'm having a good time while playing, I really like. It's almost more enjoyable, right? It's extra. Yeah. And so cities, I think cities. One of the things I loved was just the dice rolling and then the no downtime. Like you, I'm impatient. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are pretty good about taking, quick turns and stuff. But, there are people in our group and in our circles of friends that are like so AP prone, so it's like you're shaking the dice. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. I mean, we were picking on Mike, but honestly, Mike was taking maybe at most like a solid minute longer than Bob and I, right? So 60 seconds, not really that bad. All things considered. And that wasn't even every time. That was maybe once or twice.
Jesus Christ, you exaggerator.
Oh, Lord. I thought a minute. I didn't realize I was going to hurt his feelings with a minute.
I mean, it wasn't that long usually, but Hey, usually. I got a question.
Okay.
Sure. What is your thing with tin robots?
That's a great question. It's going to sound probably less interesting than the story should be. But when I was trying to come up with a name for a company, I was down in New York on the company I was working with on a business trip. And we were in this little bar, the little New York bar. And across the back of the bar, they had all these little tin robots from around the world. It just looked cool, like this Art Deco kind of vibe to it, and it kind of stuck with me. And was kind of trying to come up with names, and I was thinking, a lot of people are. Again, this is 6 years ago, right? So I was thinking at that time, people moving from, a new trend of moving away from digital into analog, right? So you saw a lot of people starting to put consoles down, and say, no, I want to actually put my phone down and be face to face and have actual conversations with people. So the whole idea of going back to that kind of analog experience, and then Tin Robot, I triggered that memory I had from like a month earlier of being in this bar and seeing these robots. So I thought, I wonder if Tin Robot, and I searched, and the name was available across the board, across all social media handles, the URL, everything, right? And so I'm like, that's it. And that blue robot was the one I liked the most that I had seen, and that was my logo for the first year and a half. Was the actual picture of that a photo I took of that robot. And then of course with logo design, brand design, it's always better to have single color flat vector files. So we restylized that into our current logo. And it just kind of it's stuck. And then of course I collect, and people give you stuff when you start collecting. People just start giving you stuff, right? So now you have these like ceramic robots below me here that my kids gave me. I've got a tin robot here from like the 70s. It's got a wooden arm on it that one of my kids picked up at a garage sale somewhere. And then just start building a collection up. And I've got, the camera up there, you can see I've got a ton of robots up on my shelf there, and literally started collecting as many as I could. What I realized is the authentic ones aren't cheap.
Oh, nice.
They are not cheap. So mine are all kind of most of them are newly made ones that are kind of made to look retro. But that was kind of the whole thing behind Tin Robot. That is kind of like the whole idea of that tactile way of play, right? From when we were kids. Hey, how's it going?
All right. Carlos has another question. Matt, probably not as good as Mike's question.
Keep them all coming. It's okay. Don't apologize.
So what role does physical component design play in the overall experience?
Is he asking in general, or is he asking specifically on this game?
I would say probably in general, but
yeah, in general for me, and I always say for me because it's different for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really like chunky components. That's just I like it, right? When I'm playing a game and I've got a meeple, to me, if it's a screen printed meeple versus a non-screen print, I go for the screen printed meeple, right? So
Same.
Guarding Geckos is probably the culmination of my passion around chunky components. And if you remember from that game, like UV printed, double printed on both sides, little meeples of these bugs and the geckos. And for me, it was just
over there,
just the ultimate of what I like to see in a game. And thankfully, there's a lot of people that like to see that as well, right? And that is one of the things that I hear for Tin Robot Games that people really like, the fact that we put a lot of effort in making sure that we do chunky components, right? And so if I take the Cities of Venus, those quad layer player boards, I could have easily, in the initial prototypes, were a single layer board you just place cards on top of. It's functional, but it's not as cool and as immersive as actually sliding stuff physically into the actual board. With Guarding Geckos, very easily could have done punch outs. Functionally, they would have worked.
Right.
But something about the heaviness of that wood and the clink sound as it going into the tray, or the gems. I could have gone with punch outs on the gems for V-Night, right? But no, we've got actual physical acrylic gems for our V-Night. So everywhere I can, I will upgrade the components because I like to see that in games I play, right?
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of them on my shelf where there's a reason why there's a market out there for aftermarket components through Board Game Geek, for instance, where people can go and, if you've ever played, what's it called? The one with
Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Quacks of Quedlinburg's example. Yeah. Perfect. That's what I was thinking of. I don't even own it, but I love that game, right?
Yeah. Same.
I've played that with the punch outs, and it's like, it's good. But when you play it with those little acrylic pieces, like, wow, just to feel them in the bag and pulling them out and put them on your board, and the sound when that plastic hits the board, it just has a little oomph to it. And to me, the quality that connotes, especially for a lot of us who are collectors and know that's going to be in our collection for a while, like you're going to pull that out probably for the next 10 years. Why not? Right.
Yeah.
And I've learned how to source well enough now. I don't use brokers. I'm direct to factory in China, right? Direct to several factories I work with in China, where it's taken some time to get that experience to figure out exactly how to do sourcing right, where I can do that and not make the game too crazy and cost. Like I can get that within a reasonable cost. So that's why I do it. So for me, it is incredibly important to have the tactile components be an integral part of the game for Tin Robot games. Not the same for everybody, but for Tin Robot games.
Anachrony being one of my favorite games, we were talking about expansions, and that exosuit expansion for that, like being able to take your worker and slide it into like an actual exosuit and then put it out on a map.
Yeah.
It's so much cooler than just laying it on top of another flat cardboard chip and putting that flat cardboard chip out there. Like, it makes the game so much cooler to me. Like, I get it. Like, those bits are the fancy bits. Gotta like the fancy bits.
Yeah, fancy bits is awesome. It's not for everybody, but I think that the market is large enough now that for the people that are a little bit deeper into the hobby, like one level deeper, it's something that I think a lot of us look for, right, in the games. That's why the premium versions of games usually fund more than even the base version, right? You can get the base versions at most of your retail stores. Let me put that disclaimer out there as well. Cities of Venus Survivors is only available on Kickstarter.
Uh-oh.
This is not going to be a retail. I've already turned down 4 retailers on this game. On Cities of Venus, it was more than a dozen that we turned down. And I remember I was at Origins, and Tim, I saw you at Origins there, and I remember when we were in our booth, and I had a retailer come over, and I was talking to him about the game, explained the game to her, and she's like, "All right." She grabs a chair, sits down. She goes, "Okay, let's talk business. I've got 6 stores. What kind of price can you do for me?" And I'm like, "You can get the Kickstarter price. Like, here's the link if you want to go." No. Like, if I want to order for my store, I'm like, we're not offering this game to retailers. Like, if you want to buy, you're buying like everyone else. It is not worth it for me to risk a retailer getting the game before a backer, because I know that, again, back to my personal likes and dislikes, that drives me bananas when I back
Sure.
the game. Then my local game shop is announcing they have it in stock. And if you pick it up, you're not even paying shipping. And I've just backed that person to get the game into Canada. It drives me crazy. So for me, that's something that we really focus on, is making sure that doesn't happen. We have casual game, like so Garden Geckos, for instance, you can get now in some retailers and so forth. That's through a consolidator we're using in the States. But again, was well after the campaign was delivered. But the Cities of Venus franchise, the main Chronicles, so Lost Contact, now Survivors. The third one will be Civil War. And we might talk about that at the end of this. Those will never be at retail unless somebody's bought them and at the same price as everyone else and decide to put it at retail.
There you go. That's pretty interesting to know.
Mhm.
Man, there's so many good questions to ask.
Hit me.
But I'm going to go with Carlos right now. So what are some common pitfalls that board game designers should avoid?
Let me just open up my next beer. That's a great question. This is something I would like to do at some point, is actually write a mini pamphlet or book to offer up for free. Just put on my website or something like that for Jimmy Stagmeyer does a lot of stuff like this too, right? Or just to pay it back. I think the biggest pitfall you can get caught up in, there's two. One is realizing that you don't know what you don't know. And it's easy sometimes to put the blinders on, where it's important to have a vision on your game. But kind of we're talking about earlier on, if you're asking for feedback, truly open yourself up to it, write it all down. No matter what's said, say, oh, that's a great thought. Even if it's you're burning on the inside, just write it down and say, oh, it's a good thought. Thank you for sharing. And it's a gift, right? Feedback is a gift. So thank the person, no matter how harsh. Say, thank you for sharing. And thank you for having the courage to be as blunt with me as you just were. Thank you. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to think about this. I might not act on it, but I'm going to think about it right now, but it's a great suggestion. It allows you the chance to kind of separate yourself from the emotion of it and then truly reflect on it over the next several days, right?
Sure.
So pitfall one, I think, is not get caught up in your vision and being open to kind of the feedback that's out there. I think that the other pitfall you can run into is the opposite of that. So I'm not trying to be cryptic here, but you can easily fall down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of feedback from everybody and everyone wanting to give you, here's what you should do with your game, that can pull you away from your initial vision and put you off course, right? And again, I go back to these people, they're showing the same game for 4 years. And no offense to those people. And if any of them are watching this podcast, I apologize. But I mean, it's the reality, right? Like that is the bad flip side of that. And so I don't wish that for people either. So that's where I say it's good to go to a couple of those, to go deep, write the ideas down, don't make any changes, take the same game. Now go to general people that are not designers or regular gamers, get their feedback, write it down, try to put the two together and say, okay, what are the incremental changes I can make one at a time? Incremental design to see how I can tweak this and go in a direction that's maybe going to be fun. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Is it fun? And that's the first question I always ask. People will jump into, oh, I should do this. I mean, whoa. Question number one, was it fun? Did you enjoy yourself? Because the answer is no. I got bigger things I got to focus on. Right. So let's not worry about the fixes. Let's worry about why it wasn't fun. What was it didn't make it fun? Then we can start worrying about the things that are going to fix it. So those are the two big pitfalls that I got into earlier on. And I had this on Tanks But No Thanks. So this is our first game. This is a game I designed 30 years ago.
Oof.
And it was a game that, I was in school at the time when I made it. And then I shelved it because at the time the industry there was no hobby industry. It was like Parker Brothers, Hasbro. You're going to pop all those companies and try to get a job, or you're going to blind pitch your game to them, and they're probably not going to take it. And so I shelved it because I wanted to get into doing board games, shelved it and went on with my career. Coming back to it, when Kickstarter came and global sourcing came and small batch manufacturing through global sourcing and all that became a reality, where now anybody can make a game. Literally anybody can do a game.
Yep.
GameCraft is another great example. You can even go even more micro. If you want to sell 20 copies, you can literally make a game and sell 20 copies, do it through GameCrafter. Doing the full circle back, I took that game, which had been played thousands of times. It is the most played game we've ever played, right? And I took that to a game night, a developer night at a local cafe. And we had people play, and this one guy said, "Can I give you some feedback?" And I said, "What do you think?" He goes, "Well," and he had lost. He got kicked out of the game right away because he didn't take any of the advice. So when we started the game, It's a very simple game. You're either moving or you're shooting, and you're moving your tanks. It's a little bit kind of chess-like. Yes, you're chucking dice. There's some random elements to it. Full carnage. Everyone's attacking everybody on the second turn. Like it's fun. It's 20 minutes in and out. It's a blast. And that's the intention of the game, right? It's designed to be a dice chucker. And I said to him, and he kept like right off the bat, he would be like 6 squares away and he's trying to roll a 6. Right. And I said, just to let you know, most people that play this game have the best chance of winning if they try to maneuver their tanks to get it's within 1 or 2 squares of someone else's tank or base, then roll a die, because you just have to roll a 2 or higher and you hit them. If you're trying to, I got my strategy. Okay. So he got wiped out like within 10 minutes. Right. And so it gets to the end and he's giving his feedback. And I said, what's your feedback? He goes, well, my mom said not to say anything unless you never say anything if it's not nice. I'm like, we're just looking for feedback. Give it to me. I'm a big boy. I can take it.
Right.
And then he just starts shredding the game, right? Oh, you got dice. It's all random. Why you should have cards, and you got to have cards and take all the randomness out of the game. And he was trying to turn into his own kind of thing.
Because cards aren't random.
Right. I know. Hang on. Stick with me. And afterwards, and that was one of the first times I had received harsh feedback. And that one I didn't handle as well because I could feel the steam coming out of my ears. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm like, well, here's kind of some reason why I might not have enjoyed it. And he was doubling it down. I said, okay, thank you for the feedback. Thank you. I wrote it down. And I was seething all the way home, right? And I went home and I got some cards out. There's a new game that's like new in the industry, and put together a card version of we did a play test and it sucked. It wasn't fun at all. And the lesson to me there was let somebody take me off the vision and strategy and point of the game, the experience we're going for, let them get in my head. And 2, this whole concept of making it into something else because it's somehow going to be better if it can go in a different direction is a false belief. And unfortunately, a lot of designers are under this belief that if I can somehow convince you to adopt the mechanics that I have in my head of what's going to work for your game is going to be better. And most of the times that's not the case. And so we got rid of the cards, went back to the dice, and we launched it, and people love it. Like we got people they absolutely love that game. And we stayed true to the core of the game. So for me, that was a lesson earlier on that I'm glad I learned. And you always have to be thankful for these lessons too. I believe that, every time you run into these things, it's just a learning, right? Mm-hmm. So just try to log it as a learning. Say, what did I learn from that? Okay, now I'm going to try to carry that learning forward and hopefully be better at what I'm doing.
Super smart. That's smart. But you got to go and take your lumps to kind of learn those tricks, right?
Yeah. That's the other pitfall too, right? Is I'd say sometimes if there's learning, especially for this, the one I run into a lot, like on the podcast. Because again, I talked usually after I'm done the podcast, which is 30 minutes. Often I'm talking to the person for an hour afterwards.
Oh yeah, we did that.
Yeah, you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours. I literally did last time I was on Whiskey Wednesday. And there's been a number of like new designers where it's their first game, and I try to provide advice to say, look, I'm not here to tell you about your game. Like your game's your game. If you're at this point, any feedback should have nothing to do with the game. The feedback has to do with your campaign. Here's my experience of things that I really failed at the beginning that I want to pass on to you because you probably don't know these, just so you know. Do with it what you may. And I do find it's almost like your kids, where you have often you'll try to teach your kids lessons of things you learned through your life, and you don't want them to go through the same pain you went through. You're a loving parent, right? But they still have to go through it because you're the parent and they're not going to listen, right?
Yeah.
I find it often in this industry as well, where there'll be new designers that'll come in where they could learn from the other pitfalls in the industry. Jamie Stagmeyer's blog on Stonemaier Games is probably the best freaking resource out there in terms of here's some key things you need to know getting into this industry. And it still surprises me when I'll come across a publisher that still going forward, right?
Oh,
and
right. Yeah.
the biggest one being, it is okay if you delay your campaign. If you're not ready, don't launch. Nothing bad will happen. You will only get stronger. If you launch before you're ready, you're in for a lot of pain. And I've said that, I don't know how many times I've had to say this, this is not my feedback. This is Jamie Stagmeyer's feedback, right? I'm just a little guy. He's the king, right? Take his advice. Or they're like, but we've got this timeline. We pegged this date and we've told a lot of people doing this date. I'm like, okay. And then it's like someone said they're standing on train tracks and there's a train coming down the tracks. And you told them maybe you should get off the tracks. And they refuse to. You just got to sit there and wait for the train to hit them, right? And that's kind of the case, unfortunately, sadly, that I've run into a number of times.
I mean, it happens. It definitely happens.
Still.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing, right? And hopefully they live to fight another day,
and that's usually what happens is they go through the same pain learning. They dust themselves off. They're like, damn, I guess I should have listened to people that warned me about that. They're right. Okay, now I'm going to go back again. Now, hopefully they'll pass that learning off to someone else that's in the same spot down the road when they pay it forward. And they realize that 50% of the time, people are just going to ignore the advice anyways. And the biggest one is your followers. If you go into a campaign with 100 followers, if your funding goal is any higher than $1,000, you're in for a lot of pain, my friend. You are going to be struggling until you might fund. You're probably going to fund if you're between maybe 1,000 to 5,000, but it's going to be a friggin' grind right till the end. And then you're going to wish you had either waited till you had a higher account going in, or you went with a lower number.
Because it's that or you barely fund, right? Yeah, you either don't fund or you barely fund.
It is insanely math, and we'll get to Dave's question in a second. It is insanely mathematical. Like Kickstarter, I don't know if people realize how mathematical Kickstarter is. Right now, I have a pretty good idea of how I'm going to finish based on the follower account I had going in, and the VIPs we had going in. And then when you do your day one funding, you can pretty much solidify with a 95% confidence what your end result is going to be. Now you just got to go along for the ride and try to mitigate the slide, right?
That is always so crazy to me. I know it's a thing, and I've been told that by several, designers and publishers and stuff. And it's like, it just blows my mind, and that's because it used to shock me, way before I had much industry knowledge, where a Kickstarter campaign would be funded and within 3 days of them starting, it's already funded, but they cancel it. And it's like, wait, what? And it's like, well, they already know where the ending numbers are likely going to be. And it's smarter for them to pull it and relaunch, when they can have a stronger start. And it's
Bloodstone is probably the best example of that. So I had Jim Hudson on the podcast when he was with Skybound at the time, and he launched Bloodstone, which was his kind of baby that he had created. And when I was interviewing him, he was already at $250,000. And I was like, wow, high fives, man, you're doing this is amazing. He's like, yeah, it's great. He pulled the campaign the next day.
Oh, shoot.
And people were like, what the hell, man? Like, you had a $60,000 goal. Like, why would you pull this ridiculous? It's not realizing that, again, is mathematical, right? So if you look at the math for me, I don't know what his math is, but I can guess what his math is.
Right.
He knew going in, he put 60,000 because at the very least you want to cover off the base manufacturing cost of your game. Any pre-investment going in, any development, that's sunk costs, you don't include any of that. You take what is just the physical manufacturing of minimum run of that game. That's your goal. So for him, that'd be say 60,000. But then what he wants to achieve was probably $1 million. Is with Skybound. He had probably expectations of marketing and so forth to hit that. And as soon as the numbers are showing that they're not going to come close to hitting $1 million, pull the ripcord right onto the next project, reallocate those resources. So, I had this. Started doing this on the podcast because I kept running into publishers where, we do an interview and then they pull their they pull the game the next day. So I just started saying now, send me your Kickstarter campaign link and let me look at it. And if I'm looking at it, I'm running the numbers on my end. And if I know they're not going to fund, I'm like, guys, here's from what I'm seeing in the numbers, I don't think you're going to hit your goal. I think we should hold off maybe to week 3 of your campaign before we have it on the podcast, just in case.
Just in case.
Because I want to promote you, and I want everybody to high five you, and it's really going to suck if our interview is all about how you're struggling and how who knows if you can make it. And I need backers just to make it, right?
So you're not pulling the plug on Survivors tomorrow, are you?
No. No, that baby's going forward. No, we're good. We're gonna have a strong finish. I want to answer Dave's question first.
Yeah.
Then I'll jump back to this. This is good stuff. I love this stuff. So how much should you tell playtesters about the type of game you're trying to make before playing? Does the answer change your playtesters or if your playtesters or designers? So that's a great question. So the second part of the question is absolutely it will change how the designer approaches the game. It changes how I approach games. I actually ask people before I play. If I'm doing a play test, I'll say, what are you trying to achieve? Like whatever, because often you're playing like with printouts and hand cut pieces of paper at the beginning that you slide into card sleeves, right? So, which is the right way to do it because you want to make sure you get the mechanics right first. I'll ask that question. I'll say, what kind of game are you trying to create here? Is this a casual game? Is this a deep game? What's the core mechanic? How far into the process are you? So what feedback are you looking for from me? Because if they're like, well, I just want to know, like, do you like the theme? Does the theme match the mechanics? I'm going to focus. I don't want to shit on them, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to swear on your podcast.
No, yeah.
We speak French.
I had a client once. It was actually French. I actually said that to them, like, oh, pardon my French, and they're just like dead look on their face. They did not like that. So because I want to structure my feedback in a way that is as positive for them and constructive as possible. So there's no point in me ripping into the mechanics of the game or saying this wasn't balanced, that wasn't balanced. If they've got their mindset and they're really just looking for, does the theme match the mechanisms, right? So, okay, well, that's where I'm going to focus my feedback. So I ask that of other designers. I'll preface that, and the same thing I do for them. In terms of how people generally, like the other audience, which are just casual gamers who aren't designers, I won't necessarily I'll focus more on the story, right?
Sure.
So for Cities of V and Survivors, all the play testing we did that, I just said, okay, you're a mech, you've landed on the surface, your scent thrusters have failed. You realize you're pretty much toast. You're going to do what you can to mine as much as you can, and then, lights out. However, you've received a signal from a chiropod in the distance. You realize there's survivors out there that fall to the surface, and you know what? You're thinking, hey, maybe I can save some people and have new purpose in my life. That's your mission. So this game is a dice manipulation polyomino game. Those two combinations are combined. The dice manipulation, I'll explain to you how the manipulation works, but this is to help you drive your mech. The polyomino placement, envision like a satellite above looking down topographically. That's kind of your mech exploring. That's what I give them, then we get into it. And then I get the feedback from there of, likes, dislikes, what worked, what didn't work. Was it fun? Things like that, right? So that's a great question because you approach that differently based on your audience.
Yeah, so many things are so easy to take for granted. I learned so much.
How many?
Go on.
I'll end. So Trevor says, how many different play testers do you aim to get before bringing it to a convention for strangers to try on their own? That's a great question. It really depends on a couple of factors. One, quite frankly, is access to people, right? Access to strangers. So I'm in Canada. I can't necessarily get to conventions as often. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll set up those blind play tests with like people at a meetup or so forth, right? I'll set up as a here you go. The play tester count really depends on when the game is kind of ready, right? So I'll play in my close, intimate friend group. So people who have been used to playing many of the games we've done, who are brutally honest we got the shorthand established of they know kind of the types of games that Tin Robot does. And I'll say, here's kind of what I'm trying to do. They'll get feedback and they'll be like, okay, I'm not sure this is working and so forth. Garden Gecko is a perfect example of that. Each hex tile was 6 patterns originally.
Oh, wow.
And we got it through one round And the guy, and they call time. They're like, my eyes are bleeding. I have to stop. Like, I'm gonna give you my feedback. I've seen enough, right? So, and then we made changes, right? That was with my small group. Once I get to the point where I know that within that small group, they're like, that was fun. I enjoyed that. Then I'm like, okay, now let me take it to strangers. Let me take it to broader groups of people who are more loosely connected to, and get their feedback. Once I know the thing can actually operate without a glitch, then I'll put it in the hands of someone to blind play test it.
Okay.
But the count, it really depends, right? Like some games come together much faster than others. Garden Geckos came together really quick. This other one, Survivor, the Cities of Venus Survivors, it's been 3.5 years, right? So it really depends on how deep the game is versus like a casual game versus a non-casual game. Usually there's a different kind of development time there. But kind of the answer is when it's kind of ready is when you take it to the next group. But I do it in those 3 stages.
There you go. There you go. Evan had a good question. Why do I only put up comments that are on topic? That's rude. Love you too, Evan.
We'll take any comments, even if they're off topic.
Hell yeah.
Quick question I have though is like, so your insert for Survivors, it's great. You can actually get your finger in there and pull the
That's
tile.
not a question.
It is a question. It's coming.
Hey, I'll take the compliments. It's all good.
How many tries did it take for you to get that right? And did you just find the person with the thickest fingers that you knew and have them like, make sure they can get their finger in there to pull them out? Because like so many games like Ostia is one of the games I just got. It has a really nice, almost nice insert. But like the finger holes, I can barely get my pinky in there to get some of these tiles out. And it was so easy to just reach in there, grab your tile, pull it out, and then throw them back in there. Like it was. I was curious, like how hard was that to do?
Bob, the real question is, why did James fly Mike up there to use his big old sausage fingers to test out this insert? Because Mike's fingers fit that insert perfectly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like it's a little sus.
I wish I could take credit. What happened was on this one is originally I didn't have a 3D printer yet. So I had a buddy that said, hey, do you want me to take a cut at, because we used to dump them in piles on the table, right, when we first started. And literally the tiles where I went to my local dollar store, took 3 sheets of Bristol board. Do you call it Bristol board down there? Yeah.
Poster board?
Poster board, yeah. Glue them together and then put the graphics on top, graphic stickers on top, top and bottom, and then cut them out with exactly that. So they got the perfect thickness of what you'd have with a punch out. And flat, not curved. You sticker both sides, that way they won't warp. And so we're playing, and my buddy who runs a meetup group south of where I'm at, which is the one I've been part of for 12 years, and or sorry, not 12 years, that's long, 6 years. He suggested, said, hey, could I do a tray for you with my 3D printer? And because he was dabbling in 3D design. I said, yeah. Well, he happens to be a very big guy. So he made it based on his finger size, right? And so then I took his initial design and continued to build from there because I with timelines, and I finally got 3D printers. So I started saying, okay, well, let me see if I'll take it from here. But I modeled the holes off his original design that he had created as I built it out. Originally, it was 2 trays that were lengthwise on the table. And in the manufacturing process, the manufacturer was going to charge me 2 molds. 2 trays. And they said, well, when we stack these in the box and so forth, you're going to have spaces in the boxes. And so I just came back and said, you know what? I don't know why I'm trying to keep these as 2 separate trays. So I literally took the 2 trays and merged them together digitally and 3D printed it as a solid piece and sent them as the file. Said, here, model it to this. And because it just worked, right? The way the we can number the pieces and they're all kind of grouped in the right way. And it fit the box snugly so that we get the maximum efficiency of that box pack. So that's kind of how we got to that size. But the learning there, I think, is that anytime I do a tray going forward, I will model it after that same diameter.
Oh my God, one of the best inserts.
Some of those manufacturers over there, because like I don't know if they just have small hands, so like oh yeah, it's fine. But no, you got to get some big sausage fingers, so that way you can.
Yeah, I think what's happening is when manufacturers are designing trays, they're not necessarily thinking of it like whose hand is this going to fit. In their mind, it's all about the pack out, right? How efficiently can we have everything packed in the box? So they might be looking at, okay, if I put these different shapes together, what size hole can I put that's going to fit with those two shapes next to each other, right? Versus the opposite of saying, no, hole attached to the shape. Now let's put all those on the grid and figure out how the jigsaw puzzle make those fit as efficiency as possible, right?
Bob, while you were busy doing box art modeling, I've been busy doing hand insert modeling.
Gotcha.
Which is a great question. So, Garden Geckos, of course, you funded that successfully, and you had Bob pose for some of the optional box art.
Yeah.
But then after it funded, you actually made a box art switch. There was an option to get 2 different types of box art. What went into that decision? And is there any consideration on allowing Bob to be the inspiration for Cities of Venus Survival?
I love it.
I've only been waiting an hour and 48 minutes to drop that one.
You got to send that to me.
Mike, you timed that perfectly, sir. Let me just say, you timed that perfectly.
Yeah, I guess. Hey, Bob, there you go. You have to change your nickname from Gecko Bob to Bob Mech, I guess.
Mecha Bob.
No, box art switch after funding, you don't see a whole lot. So what went into that?
Yeah, one thing I try to do that I think is one of the benefits and advantages of Tin Robot Games, and I think why the people that have backed us on multiple campaigns are sticking with us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that we are always willing to listen and change. One thing that kind of came up during the development of the game is we really loved, I don't have the other abstract box here. I could probably go grab one.
I got it for you on BGG here. I'll pull it up.
We did this design, right? Which I really like the cute look for it. And the thought at the time was, what would attract somebody to this when they're going by and playing the game? And so even amongst our playtesters, they were split 50-50. We didn't have an alternate. We showed them the box and like, well, it's kind of cartoony. It kind of feels like a kid's game, but when I play it, this is definitely not a kid's game.
Right.
It's very thinky, right? And so what we said, well, we're gonna launch because we think we got a good design here. We used Cesar Delgado, who did Hamsters versus Hippos, very, very talented illustrator. And we really loved this image. We thought it was really cute. And we had this plan to do plushies during our campaign that kind of matches Gecko. But this Gecko is not on the tiles. He's literally just in the box in the rule book. When we got the reviewers' feedback on the game, because we had a lot of reviewers on this game, we produced 100 copies. Did a small run. This is something I like to do is, even what you guys have is, that's not it's a small production run, right? We just had to do a small production run of 10 games, but it's done at the factory, right? And because there's things you're going to learn that you're not going to know until you physically have in front of you. Like on that tray, we're going to make it a little bit deeper so that the cards fit in a little bit better. Maybe go to radius corner those terrain tiles you have because they're sharp corners right now. And part of the thinking behind that is how they kind of match up and so forth. But these are all things until you tactically have in front of them, you don't know, right? To make those final kind of tweaks. With this game, we sent it to a lot of reviewers. So we had 100 copies. I think we had like 60 reviewers look at this game. And most of them loved the design. They thought it was cute. But then when you listen to the feedback, some of them were putting disclaimers in their videos saying, love the box. It's so cute. But if you're watching, I don't want you to believe this is a kid's game audience. This is actually really thinky and really strategic as you're placing these tiles. Don't let that dissuade you from backing this game. I think it's a great game. And Unfiltered Gamer was one of those ones where he was unfiltered, and that's what I love about him. And he straight up was like, I hate the box. Looks like a kid's box. Man, I love this game. It's a great game, but I hate the box. Anyway, back to the game. It was something like that, right? And I got thinking, I'm like, you know what? I think if I go to retail with this box, it's probably going to do better with an abstract looking box. It will probably do better with an abstract box because people self shop. You don't have the ability, you don't have the marketing dollars to educate person when they're at the store. They need to be able to look at it and understand what is this about. And my belief then became, I really believe that people are going to buy this game more if they see the abstract box because it ties in better to what the game's all about. So you have a dilemma because you've already got all these backers that funded you that you sold them on the cartoon box, right? So I reached out to my manufacturer and said, okay, if I split this order in half and I do half the boxes with this design, the cartoon design, and half the instruction sheets with that design, and I had created this new design, which is modeled more off of the, I don't have it here, the magnetic pin that you get with the people got as a first player marker, that kind of gecko with the swirly tail. I'm not sure if you guys got one of those or not. It looks super dope.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, I'll get you one. But
I got one.
Yeah, it looks more. Oh, thanks, man. It's kind of modeled more after that design.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to run the math. And when they ran the math, it was obviously it's going to be more expensive because you're now splitting a run. But it was important to me that I stay true to those who were sold on and loved, because a lot of people really like, people who love this, love it, right?
Mm.
So I put the option out to the backers and just said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do: is we are going to produce both boxes, and we're going to give you the option to choose which one you want. So if you want to switch, you've backed the cartoon one, but if you want to switch to the abstract, because some of you said, I'm begrudgingly backing it, I'm not going to look at the cover, I'm just going to play the game, here's the other option you can choose. And it was amazing. It was about 50-50 split of our backers that chose this box versus the abstract. So when we placed our order, it was more of a 75-25% split on our actual manufacturing run, where we made enough plus 10% to cover off all the backers who wanted the cartoon box, and then everything else is made in the abstract box. So that's why we did it. But again, it's just constantly listening to people.
I remember those emails coming through and asking like which one people wanted and whatnot. But of course I had.
And as you remember too, we weren't even sold on the design. So we're like, okay, what's the font? Like this font here originally started off, I think on the campaign page, if you have it there, it's more of a lighter green. And again, I'm kicking myself because this is one of those examples where I had a designer who had helped me actually with the actual design of this box that was sold on. We had the right typeface for this up front because it was like a lighter green. If you go to the Kickstarter page, you'll see it's a lighter green up here. But we had a ton of people saying, I don't like that font. I don't like that. And it wasn't that they didn't like the font. They didn't like that there wasn't contrast with the box. Yeah, see? So this is what we end up going with here, right? It's a darker green. Much, much better. Same font, just darker green. So we start sending this out to backers too, saying, hey, like, none of us are as smart as all of us. Give us your feedback. What do you think? Do you like this one? Do you like this one? And through kind of A/B testing, we narrowed down to then this typeface for this box, and then the typeface that you just showed on the abstract Garden Geckos box.
That's a very fair and objective way to look at that. Because you're right. Like, while I love this box cover, it is adorable. And even though the game has such a simple rule set, there is a lot to consider on your turn. So I think it is fair to look at it and go, if you're looking at this box and expecting a game that kids can play, there's going to be a limit to that. Yeah, that's a great answer.
Before I jump to Carlos saying, do you guys want to try the expansion?
Yeah.
For this?
Yeah.
You guys want to shoot a copy? So we're going to be producing that soon. So we're going to do a reprint just in the abstract box. And part of that reprint is we're offering an expansion for people who currently have the game and obviously the new backers. The expansion is called Dewdrops and Koi Ponds. And it adds another market. So you've got the two objective markets you're going for, bugs versus terrain. But then we've got a third one, which you can actually, it's like almost like a bug vendor where you're spending your bug meeples to buy victory point cards.
Ooh.
And then the dewdrops in koi ponds, the koi ponds are actually wild terrain tiles. So everyone starts with one wild terrain tile and one wild dewdrop. So the dewdrops go on top of the bugs. You can turn the center bug into a wild. And the koi ponds can turn a terrain that you put your gecko on into a wild as well. And then once you use it, you flip it over and the fish are now gone out of that pond. So that's coming. That's going to be imminent. That one's coming in the spring. So I'll try to get you guys a copy to check out because I know you guys have all played Garden Geckos, and love to get your thoughts. Yeah, you can see in that image there on the right. That's the metal gecko I was talking about, the pin.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say, like, the new box cover does look really cool. I think it was just I think for us, or at least for me, like all the experience that we had with that first box cover, it was kind of hard not to be a little biased towards that one. But I think both of them are winners. Like, that's a great looking box cover too. I do want to know, because this just occurred to me as we were talking about, like, you know, you go to the secondary market and you get like stuff for to upgrade your components, you know, and then here you are making games where you don't have to go to the secondary market. So why do you hate Etsy and the BGG shop? Why are you trying to put them out of business by not allowing them the opportunity to upgrade your games? I'm just asking for
that's a good question.
I'm just messing with you.
You know what? But here's what I would say is because I'm a small publisher, I don't get as caught up on home brews as other people do. In fact, I love it. Right. So we had on Cities of Venus, we'll get to Carlos' question in a second. I'm still thinking about it, Carlos. So wait till I got a good answer.
Stretch.
Yeah, stretch that one out. That's a hard question. On Lost Contact, we had a number of people that I call sleevers.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just don't have any.
I sleeve some games. Depends on the game.
Hold the cards in my hand for a long period of time. I'm sleeving it.
People like to sleeve, right? So Cities of Venus Lost Contact was not designed to be sleeved because we found in the boards, we would have to make those boards bigger, and which ultimately then times that by 6. I mean, then we have to make the shipping box bigger, which then now our shipping costs go up. And every decision like that, design decision, can have real financial impact.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't focused as much on sleeves. That being said, we found during the production side, pre-production, I'll give a shout to John Rocha from Chits and Cardboard channel. He had he had a sleeve in his collection by Mayday Games that actually fit the card and fit in the board, the prototype boards we said. And he's like, "Oh, this actually fits," and I'm like, "It actually fit really well." I'm like, whoa! So I took that and I sent that out to everybody. I said, "Hey, by the way, we found a sleeve that's actually going to work with the boards." Sleevers rejoice, right? Part of the challenge with that then, because I had them say, well, will they all fit in the box once they're sleeves? So then, of course, we had to order sleeves, sleeve all the cards, which I hate sleeving cards, but I sleeve all the cards.
Sure. To
prove, yes, they fit in the box. Lots of room in the box. Phase 1 to 3 in the pocket where the cards go right now. Event and innovations to either side of the rocket ship in the box, right? So everything fits tickety-boo. However, when you put it in the stack on the table, as you know, with sleeve cards, they slide friggin' everywhere. And this stack is like this high, right? So it's a mess. So I reached out to Kevin Levy, mutual friend of ours, who's also the designer of Civil War. Again,
and maybe on a card in Survivors.
And he's on a card in Survivors too. Yeah, he's one of the engineers. Kevin knows I'm a big fan of Kevin. Like I can't speak Kevin's praises enough. He is the best partner you could possibly have as a designer on your team. Reached out to him. I said, "Hey Kevin, I'm working on a tray that because here's the issue. We've got the card sleeves, they're spilling all over the place. I need a tray that can come apart and fit in the box. I want to run some ideas by it." He goes, "Okay, let's talk in the morning." In the morning, he sends me over the STL files for the for the design. He's a beast. It's great. He's so good. So he put those up on they're available online. People can download them for free, 3D print them. All comes apart, fits nicely in the box. You click it all together before you start playing. You can put your sleeve cards in there. So
that's wild.
That's a homebrew that I love. If someone ever comes up with their own version of a card that they want to throw in a sleeve and start using their game, giddy up. Share it with me. Maybe we'll use it in a future iteration. One thing we are considering doing for that game is there's enough people out there that like Take That or like player interaction where they want to be able to do stuff to other people's, mess with other people's cities. We are considering putting together a Take That pack.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So what that will probably do is we'll probably solicit from the community of Cities of Venus players what people want or ideas people have, and we'll pick the best ones, and we'll probably create a deck, make it as cheap as we possibly can for people to acquire, because we know that your market gets smaller and smaller when you're doing subsequent add-ons to existing games. But I think that'd be something kind of cool. And if we can't get enough people to justify a print run, then what I would probably do is make those files available in Game Crafter.
Oh, sure.
So you just go on Game Crafter and just order your expansion deck if you want, and just
buy your thing
off them. But it extends people's enjoyment of the game, which is my goal. I want people to keep playing this. So if people out there have ideas that you want to submit, love them. Another thing we're working on is fan fiction. So if you go on citiesofvenus.com, we have literally our entire vision mapped out. So you can see what we're planning for each of the different chronicles, the stages we're in, pictures, and so forth. You can get all the rule books are there for all the games. You can see how things tie in together. And then we've got a section called short stories, which was originally called chronicles, but we didn't want to cause confusion. So now we call them short stories. Oh, thanks so much. You click on short stories, and there is all the stories that we had launched during the first campaign that tied into that game. And now every week, every Tuesday, we're launching a new short story that's continuing now on the surface with the person in this mech trying to find the survivors in their story, which has been a lot of fun to write too. We're going to be encouraging people to submit fan fiction, and we're probably going to create a fan fiction section on the site where people will be able to submit their own stories. We'll vet them first to make sure they're not filled with swear words and things like that.
Yeah. You don't want /fic. You want fanfic.
Fanfic, fan fiction. And then what we'll do is if there's things that we find are fit the kind of the canon, we might even adopt some of them, right? And then we'll obviously credit the person, but we'd like to maybe adopt some of these stories into the canon of our overall universe, which is again going to span over 100 years because Civil War is 100 years in the future.
Right on.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. It's so much fun. All right, so let's get to Carlos' question of what innovations in board game design are we most excited about? And I'm glad I was able to stall long enough to come up with an answer, so I appreciate you sticking with me on this one. I think the innovation that I like the most, I don't even know if it's an innovation, but it's the first time I saw it, which I thought was really, really cool in River Valley Glassworks.
I haven't played it yet, but yeah, I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Love the game. Well, the game is so good. It's so good.
Not great for colorblind people. Just going to throw that out there. Anyways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say for Garden Gecko's Gecko Bob that our meeples are patterned on one side, solid on the other, so they're colorblind friendly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the innovation specifically I like in that game is that sliding river. So the acrylic tiles that you pull, like when you choose your glass beads off of one of the tiles, that tile comes out, everything slides forward, and that goes on the end. That whole, I don't really want to call it a mechanic because it's not really a game mechanic, but it's a mechanism. It's mechanical. This mechanism within the actual playability of the game. I just thought it was really clever. I really like that. And I've been thinking a lot about how I can adopt something like that in future games that we may or may not create. So that is, for me, I think the one innovation I've seen that I'm probably the most excited about. Yeah.
Trevor. Oh, go on, Bob.
I remember I was playing that game and people weren't really watching what I was doing. And then we got to the scoring part and I started counting up my pieces. They're like, well, those aren't the same color. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like the same shape.
Yeah. And there's two of them, even for non-colorblind people, that are super close together, right? The challenge is because you're randomly drawing out of a bag. So, well, I guess they could have done patterns or something on them, I guess. Yeah. They're trying to make them look
patterns,
like actual river rocks
or something like
what
that.
They're trying to do.
Yeah. There was some way to do it, but I'm just surprised.
There were some issues with that campaign, like in terms of like some of them actually had a texture to them, so you could tell which color was which.
Yeah.
So that didn't really work super great, but
the thing is, to me, then you just got to not play those types of games with somebody who's going to go in there and be like, okay, not this one, not this one. It's like when you play Panda Royale, you're pulling out all types of different shapes and dice. It's like, well, if you know you're one of the green dice, you're just going to reach for try to find a D20. Just reach in there and pull a handful out. Like you don't
It is a cool game though, and I have it in my collection. I usually have it in my game bag because it's a good gateway one, especially for new players on game night to get them kind of into it. It's got a very Azul kind of feel to it, and I don't want to gloss over the whole having you guys in a game officially. So I kind of tease this out to you, Tim, and I think you share it with the guys. But
I did.
We got a game coming up called Happy Heights, which is a very quick Pixie-esque. Have you guys ever played Pixies?
No. No.
You if anybody out there has not played Pixies, go get Pixies.
I'm making a note right now.
It's going to cost you like $8. It's a small box, and it plays in like 15, 20 minutes. But there's enough meat on the bone there that it is good. It's good. So that inspired us to create a quick kind of game night primer, game night filler. I need to kill 10, 15 minutes. And I created this game called Happy Heights, which you're creating heights with buildings, and you're stacking buildings, and your neighborhood can only be like 5 buildings wide. There's parks, there's subways, there's bus stops and so forth in it. And how cards you can get points based on how buildings are built up, how they go sideways, and how you're matching up buildings that are adjacent to each other, whether they have matching neighbors, like the neighbors match. So I've been looking for somewhere to put, obviously, the Board Game Rundown crew, and you guys are actually in that game. And so you're in one of the windows, and you're not on one card, you're on like 20 cards because you have to like match up, right? So
nice.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about that, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. I'll have to send you the blown up picture because you can see the details on that. On the card, you're like this big.
Oh yeah.
You'll know who it is. But
it's so flattering and crazy that you did that, and I'm super grateful because that's amazing. That everybody talks about imposter syndrome, right? And it's like, oh, somebody thinks highly enough of us to do that. Like, that's pretty cool.
It's my pleasure.
But
you know what? It is so easy to bring joy to others with very little effort. It really is, right? So, like in this one, I've got my niece with her rabbit. And again, her favorite rabbit, a large image you can see, it's her rabbit with the little lightning bolt on its forehead and so forth. The same rabbit that's in Bunny Drops. But on the game, again, she's this big. Like,
oh, sure.
She'll know who it is, but anyone else would be like, oh, there's a girl holding looks like a rabbit or something. I don't know.
Right.
But it'll bring her joy. My campaign, there's a number of backers that provided feedback on, here's some game ideas for Cities of Venus Lost Contact. I think it was Reed that made somebody did a typo about Cities of Venus that wrote Cuties of Venus by accident. They'd be like, ha, wouldn't that be a cool card? Yeah, let's go I made the card.
Nice.
There's a Cuties of Venus card, right? Like, it is not hard to integrate people wherever you can. I try to do this on playtesters. If I have lead playtesters, the people are usually there at the very beginning. They go through the pain of, I might not have anything here. I might have something here. I don't know. I need you to kind of your feedback. I always put those people's names in my book as lead playtesters because I want to give them credit for their help.
Absolutely.
They appreciate that. They're like, wow, I see my name's in a book. That's so cool. Right. So anywhere I can do things like that, I'm more than happy to. And if that brings you guys joy, I'm glad to have been able to do that. And I'm glad you guys, it just brings me joy. No one brings you joy. So thank you.
Oh yeah. No, I was so excited to share that with the guys and like, oh, hey, look, we made it.
Yeah.
So
I know there's been a couple questions that bounced through, but I will go this one here I can see, which is how little thought do you put into, I would say how little, I'd be like, how much thought do you put into player colors? I put a lot of thought into player colors, both from a colorblind perspective is very important, but also everyone has their favorite color perspective. So if I take hamsters versus hippos, for example, this is the one where I really, really started putting some thought into this in a very conscious way. And that was our third game, I think, third or fourth game. In hamster versus hippos, each of these cute little hamster meeples, which just look adorable. And again, some of the thought we put into is when they're facing you, they have one image, you flip them over the back. It's the back of them. You can see the little bums with the little tails, right? The little details like this. But we had picked all these different colors, and we tried to pick colors that were different enough that there wouldn't be a concern for colorblind players. During the campaign, people started giving feedback of, well, but my favorite color is green. And someone else is like, yeah, but my favorite color is blue. Well, you know that blue-green colorblind is one of the largest colorblind issues. Which one are you going to go with? So we end up doing a poll. And through the backer, say, guys, here's what we're faced with, right? How important is to you? And if you're playing, what trumps which, right? Is it a favorite color more important? Or is it making sure it's colorblind friendly? In that game, people's favorite color actually was ranked way higher. Now
Screw
because
you, Bob.
Yeah.
but it's a 6-player game. So if you play with 4 players, you're fine. It's if you only get up to that 5-6 player count and you have 2 people with the same, one with a blue and one with a green, you're going to have some issues, right? So Garden Geckos, we took that one step further and said, okay, we know that there's green, favorite blue. How can we adjust this game to do both? Give them both favorite color, also adjusting for people that are colorblind. And that's where we had the idea of we're going to do patterns on one side, solids on the other. So if you're 2 people are playing with the colors that you can't tell difference, one person can go solids, the other person go patterns, mission solved.
Yeah, it's just a smart and like I would say easy, but like I don't understand why more people don't do that kind of a thing, because like there are workarounds and just that little bit that I say a little bit of thought, but just that conscious effort, to make that available is great. So
What other questions did I miss there, Mike?
One of them got answered. Trevor had one that I had up, but you had answered it.
Okay.
When you were already talking about it.
Is it? Oh, why? Oh no, go away. Is it Bob drops in koi ponds? Oh, I clicked something that is not happy now.
No, there's
drops in koi ponds.
Bob's
in koi ponds.
You didn't miss a real question.
Bob drops in koi ponds. This is what the people want to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I gotta do like a homebrew version for you with Bob's face on the.
Let me just say, thank you for making games that Bob and I don't have to come up with house rules to make it fun.
I was gonna mention that when he was talking about playing a game and having fun. I was like, Tim and I literally just spent like 2.5 hours playing a game, and like one of the first things when he threw it to me in the review, I was just like, I did not have fun playing this game, and it stinks because like it was a CMON game, and like. When they first came out with Zombicide, we played it and we didn't like the rules. So we changed the rules to what we thought made more sense. It was more fun. Play it that way. Loved it. Second edition came out. They changed the rules to the way we had already changed it. So we're like, well, you know what? Let's just take this game. We'll change the rules to make it to where it's more fun to play. And then when second edition comes out, we'll be playing it the right way.
Yeah. Have you ever played Zombicide, or you play Zombicide at all?
It's on my list. I still haven't played Zombicide. I've played other games that are similar to it, but that's the one I haven't. And everyone's like, "Well, you gotta play if you play this, you have to play Zombicide."
I mean, okay, so like there was an old rule for Zombicide where if you fire into a group and there's like zombies there and there's
allies
there, you roll a hit, you
allies first.
You hit the ally first, which makes no freaking sense.
Thematically, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So we always played it where it's like, well, no, if you miss, you hit the ally.
Right. Hit zombies, misses hit allies.
That actually makes sense. Yeah, it'd be more thematically fit, right?
And then when the second edition came out, that was the new rule.
They changed the rule. Because I mean, we seriously played that and we're like, this rule's fucking stupid. We're not doing it. We're not. Like, this is terrible and it's not fun
when you play it the way we played it, but otherwise it just made no sense. So
it's interesting. Like, I mean, first of all, none of us are as smart as all of us. So
right.
Obviously, when you have the more people involved in a game, the smarter ideas are gonna kind of rise to the surface. Second is none of us are infallible, right?
100%.
So you're always doing your best to pursue excellence, but it's never going to be perfection. But I think that, as long as companies are encouraging people who are enjoying the game to provide feedback, and it sounds like they probably had a number of people giving feedback, so they made the change.
Had to have, yeah.
That's a good thing, right? Like, and people should always be okay with doing homebrews. Like, if you have a game that you're like, the current rules suck, don't just get rid of the game. If there's something you can change to actually make it enjoyable for you, well, maybe try that first.
Right? Well, that's so, like, again, right? And everybody will see this when it comes out. Yeah. So I won't spoil what game it is, but it normally, so we have like 2 policies, I guess we're going to have our cake and eat it too here. Is if we get a 10 robot game that is sent to us and we're like, we didn't love it, I'm not going to make a video because 10 robots, 2 guys, right? Just a handful of people. It's not worth it's not worth the time and effort. I'd rather be like, hey, thanks, James. We'll get us on the next one.
Yeah.
But when Simon, a game that we, they didn't send us for review, we acquired via our own means.
Yeah.
And it's a hot IP, and it's a very well-established designer. Again, this is a very well-established company. If we play a game that we're excited to play, and it is not good, I mean, we're gonna just make a video. Like,
that's fair. I think what you're saying, there's a hierarchy to how you approach feedback, right? Because in this hobby industry, you want to continue to grow, and you want to continue to encourage publishers. The greatest gift a publisher could ever, or a content creator could ever give to me, is when I send them a game that they don't like, that they send me a note, say, hey, this didn't land for us. Is there someone else we can send it to? That happened to me on Cities of Venus twice.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, thank you. And like, so sorry. I'm like, don't say sorry. I'm thanking you right now for what you're doing, because this is way better outcome than you crapping on the game in a content video and potentially impacting other people experiencing this game because they're listening to that. They happen to catch only your review and they think this is a heaping pile of dog crap, right? So I'm very thankful if a content creator says it just didn't land for us, can we pass on someone else? Or sometimes let's say, just keep it or give it to someone No worries.
Yeah, sure.
It's all good. I am fine with that. The smaller you are, the bigger the impact from some of these things.
I mean, really, like so many indie designers don't have a lot of a marketing budget, and
they have no marketing budget.
Right.
Like here's some inside stuff, right? So I don't know if you guys like the inside stuff. But
I love it. Yeah.
So Board Game Geek. Most people just think, it's just a large organization. I go on, I track my stats, I can put my reviews, tickety tick, talk to my friends. It's great. What you don't realize is that retailers look at Board Game Geek. Like, I've literally been in a retail shop, an FLG, trying to pitch my games to a local FLG, somebody in my city, right? So if you're gonna support any game, you should be supporting the publisher in your city, in your town. Yeah, for sure. City, right? In Canada, and they literally turned their laptop and said, okay, let's go through each one. And this one is not ranked. If it's not ranked over 7, I'm not going to take it. Right. So you have that on the FLG side, right? So Board Game Geek really has a huge impact on that side. On the side of the people putting information in, what you don't realize, Board Game Geek won't moderate anything.
Oh no. Yeah.
You can give somebody a 1 and they will do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Even if you've never played the game, just a troll, they'll do nothing about it. I had a friend that I reached out to them and I said, it recently happened to me on Cities of Venus. And I said, hey, are you sure you want me to send you your copy of your game? Because dude, like, he gave me like a 5. Like, I'll give you your money back. Or like, he's like, oh my God, are you serious? And he went and checked it. He goes, I had no idea. He goes, I just put all games I own, I just get them, I put 5s, and then I go in and change my ranking after I've played them.
Oh my God, that's the worst thing ever.
And I said, you probably don't know this, but that gets logged, and that's averaging me down. I'm running a new campaign on the sequel, and you're dropping me below a 7 with your 5. And he's like, oh man, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And he goes, I'll change it right away. He went and changed it right away. And boom, we're up at like a 7.2 or whatever, right? But like these things have a meaningful impact to small indie publishers. So if you enjoy an indie publisher's game, do them a solid and go give them a nice review on Board Game Geek, because it will mean the world to them and it'll help average them up, and it'll help them because they have small budgets, micro budgets. It'll help them when they're having those face-to-face with FLGs. It'll help them when they're promoting their games and so forth, right? So he's gonna.
There you go, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. So, like, you know what I'm saying? But people don't know this, right? Like, people just assume everything is just kind of like it's a large ether out there and it's going along. The number of times I've reached out to somebody that's backed one of my games and I send them a personal note and say, hey, I just want to say, thanks for backing my game. Or if they drop out, I say, hey, I just want to check in, make sure, is there anything I could have done? Was there anything, like, what was it got you to drop it? Often it's financial. People are like, look, I just had something come up in the family. I'm like, hey, totally cool. But if there's anything I could have done, just let me know. Or if there's something that didn't hit, something caused you to change your decision, let me know. The number of times I've had people come back in saying, oh, I just thought you were just some large organization. I had no idea you're just a person actually willing to talk to me, I'm in. Like, I didn't know I was going to get actual interaction with the person that made the game. Giddy up, I'm back in.
Yeah.
So like these things matter, especially with the small guys, and you want to support the small guys because they're the ones that are innovating. They're the ones taking risks, right? So back to the questions asked earlier on, what is the newest game mechanic that's got you excited in the industry? Guess what? Most game mechanics are from new things, are from indie publishers that you've probably never heard of, and maybe you've never had a chance to play their games. They're usually designed there first because these are people that are trying to create something new and they're creating risks. And the larger publishers the CMONs of the world don't want to take risks. They're doing the math and they're saying, how can we maximize our sales? How can we maximize our profits? How can we get as much cost as we can out of this game and get the most amount of backers as possible? The last thing they want to do is go with something that's untested, right? So that's why sometimes it hurts as an individual publisher. And I've had this happen in the past where I've had a reviewer look at a game and say, why wasn't they did this thing and it's not kind of the way it's like worker play. They did kind of go, it's a worker placement-ish. This was some of the feedback we had on Lost Contact, but it's not really truly worker placement. So I don't know if I like that because I like worker placement. And it's like, okay, we're trying to do something different here, guys. Like, I don't ever want to get in a position where I'm avoiding taking risks and trying new innovative things because I'm afraid it's going to impact me on the sales and successful side, right? So
right. Well, I don't know, man. I think though also if you're like, I only like this kind of worker placement and I don't want to play any other kind of worker placement.
Yeah.
Then I don't know if new games are what's for you. Maybe just play the ones that you like.
It's funny when you have 60 people review a game. It is amazing that the smorgasbord of feedback you get. It is
it, and I will say, right? Like we have learned the hard way. If we're gonna do a video on a game and we don't have a ton of positive things to say about it, make sure we know what the hell we're talking about. I mean, we had a review of a game and we realized we had something wrong. We reshot the video because what we had wrong changed, like affected our opinion of the game. And it was like, okay, hold on. Like we've got to go like a different direction with this because we realized something and we had to redo it. We had to do it the right way. And this one that we just did again, we Bob and I multiple times are like, look, we put hours into trying to figure out this game and make sure we're playing it right. If we're not doing it right, let us know. But we played it as best we understood it. And this isn't like hey, I could message James and go, hey man, is this rule this? Because this is what I think it is.
Yeah.
Like we don't have that access. It's like, this is we're going to just do what we can. So, it's like, hey, if we got something wrong, let us know because we played it as we understood it and had a miserable time. I thought
but that's good feedback, right? Like I've had some reviews where they played the game wrong.
100%.
And it's like, but again, you try to be appreciative. So unless it's like a scathing one, I usually let mistakes slide. You say whatever. Like at the end of the day, it's kind of a classic thing of like nothing matters, no one cares. In this hyper short attention span, scroll environment that we're in right now, the chances that mistake's going to be caught by anybody or even seen is so low that. But I had one on Cities of Venus where they're like, it's crazy. Like I had so many V-Knots. I was swimming in V-Knots. There's we didn't get it. Like, it's just like my board was covered in V-Knots after like 2 rounds. And well, it turns out every time they did a booster card, they're just putting them anywhere. So they weren't putting them in the department they're supposed to go in.
They're right.
And then if there's spillover, instead of them going out the escape hatch, because if you've got 8 and you got a capacity 6, 2 are lost, right?
Right.
They're out in space or they're not utilized. They were just redeploying them anywhere.
Oh, geez.
So when they're explaining this to me, I'm like, okay, well, of course, this is why you had the experience you had. Like, there was no there's no risk. There was no decisions to be made because you always had somewhere to put the people. And the magic of that game is always having to make decisions. And that's what I like in the designs I do, is try to force people to make almost like that choose your own adventure thing, right? Where am I going to go right or am I going to go left? I have to make a decision, and that's going to set me on a certain path. And then hopefully if you design it right, they've got other paths they can take to still circle back to the finish line, right? And in that one, that was what we were trying to do, to say, okay, we want to force somebody to make decisions. Do I grab that card that's going to add people in my department and protect me against the next event that hits because it's going to be devastating? Or do I take a risk and not boost that department and try to go for that other upgrade that's going to give me this thing that maybe give me an advantage in the game?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been times where we have gotten rules wrong and somebody has commented and I go, yep, I understand what you're saying. And that would not have, I don't feel like that would have changed my opinion of the game.
Sometimes too. Sometimes things just don't land. And that's the reality. Is it's like beer, right? Like you haven't, people say they don't like beer. Well, you haven't tried every beer.
Right.
Games, there's a lot of games I love and there's a lot of games I don't.
Same.
It's just the reality of it, right? And there's certain styles I gravitate towards, and there's certain styles I don't gravitate towards. There's certain playtimes I gravitate towards, there's others I don't. So, and I think sometimes that is also where you are in your life, right?
Yeah.
Kids, do you not have kids, right? Like, where are you in your life cycle? Because that's going to impact your available time to just kind of sit, chill, drink beer, and play games, right?
Hell yeah. All right. Well, since we have now...
We're 2 hours and 50
we don't
minutes
have near as...
Are we shutting her down? Is that what we're doing?
We don't have near as many questions. So James, yes, let's wind down, James. So I know you've got let's go through the plugs. Let's promote your stuff.
Thank you. Yes.
And let's
all right,
go.
So first and foremost, Cities of Venus Survivors is on Kickstarter right now. We are fully funded, 3.5 times our funding goal. Halfway in, we're gonna have a we're always strong. We're gonna have a very strong finish. Very excited.
Link is in the description.
What's that?
Link is in the description.
Link is in the description. There we go. Oh, thanks for your time, Carlos. I appreciate it. Thanks for your questions. This game is something that we've put a lot of time, effort, and passion into. Is part of a broader universe, which is the Cities of Venus universe. All standalone games. They're all connected. The first game, Cities of Venus Lost Contact, you're trying to establish a city in the clouds. And there's the hardship associated with that before you lose contact with Earth. The add-on game we had in the pledge badge for that game was Time Splicers. This is the event that causes you to lose contact with Earth in the first place. So those two games are kind of companions to each other. Again, standalones. You don't have to own both. You can either own either or. The game we have right now, Cities of Venus Survivors, has an add-on game called Dust Reclamation. This is a trick-taking game where it's dynamic. So that kind of lead suit can change literally within the hand as you're adjusting this reclamator in the center of the table. Super cool thing that we've done there. And again, we tried to build some innovation into different kind of mechanisms into that game. And you can jump in on any of these things as part of this campaign. We do have some bundles we're running that if people have not joined the first game and they missed the first campaign, we have some limited inventory left over of the first Chronicle, we're calling it Lost Contact, where if you wish, you can get both games as one of the pledge levels. Lost Contact, and you can see the Uber Premium Box, Ultra Premium Box we're calling right there. Again, with a metal disc on the front. This is going to ship when the campaign concludes. So the first Chronicle, if you do the bundle, that goes out right away. As we're producing Cities of Venus Survivors, and that game will come at a later date. And again, different mechanisms altogether with your Cities of Venus is Survivors is dice manipulation. So if you like dice thrones and things like that, we're trying to get kind of like that Yahtzee with polyomino placement on the table, a la, pick your polyomino, whether you're playing Barren Park, if you're playing Cats,
Planet Unknown, Isle of Cats, Patchwork, any of those.
Patchwork, anything like that. So that is kind of the key mechanism we combined for this game in a very unique way. And we appreciate people's support, and we appreciate your input. Like, people that know me know that I'm very, very responsive. If you have a question during the campaign, DM me directly through Kickstarter. I will respond to you. let's have a conversation. You can join any of our social channels and contact me there as well. So I'm very, very accessible, and I'm hoping that you'll come along for this journey with us and be participative in that journey. It's not just backing games, but setting ideas, because we take a lot of ideas and we incorporate it into this narrative that we're building here. So
yeah, you don't have to rate James's games poorly to get a message from him. You can just reach out and say, "Hey, man, what's up?"
I was about to switch my ratings. Dang.
So thank you so much for anybody that's seen me for the first time, or any of you that are joining that have backed any of our games or purchased any of our games that are in the marketplace, Tin Robot Games. Again, we appreciate you. And even on the podcast, Board Game Binge, if you've joined that podcast, we've got a book that just recently came out as well. Thank you. You click on that book image, takes you to a book, gives you some of the first 100 episodes. If you're a game designer, very handy, because we actually bullet each of the lessons. Like, here's the key insights that came out of every single one of those first 100 episodes, which are timeless learnings, quite frankly. So definitely another good resource for you as well. You can see our full back catalog on boardgamebinge.com.
And thanks to James, I can now say I've been on the same podcast as Tom Vassell. You've had some big boys on there, man. You've had some really some heavy hitters on there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we try to. My goal on Board Game Binge, without trying to plug it too much, is I really want to approach it like I want people to experience what I'm experiencing as I'm trying to learn the industry. And I've been in the industry now for 6 years, so I've learned a lot. But the whole thing started with me trying to learn. And I thought I could learn best from people who have already done different things. So I interview everybody in the industry. So everything from designers, publishers, content creators, artists. We had what's his name from that did Everdell, the artist on the front of that.
Oh yeah. I'm blanking now too.
Bosley.
Yeah, Andrew Bosley's been on there. Like you name it, we've had them on there. Big personalities like the Tom Vassells of the world. It's very kind to him to come on our podcast for the 300th episode and celebrate with us.
All the way down to me from Board Game Rundown.
You guys are heavy hitters.
Tim in his basement. Yeah.
All the way down to, again, we'll have a small publisher who is their first game on there that, I've had people on there with games that just do 5,000, but for them, that helped them realize their dream of getting a game in the market and funding the manufacturing. And I'm cool with that because there's learnings there as well, right? So sometimes you can learn from other people's struggles, and I think that's a great way to learn, quite frankly. And so that's how we approach that. So it's not just heavy hitters. We go for as wide of a swath as we can.
And I do want to say, and I know I keep bringing it back to that Vassell interview, but that conversation really impressed me because of how open and candid he was. Because that was not Tom Vassell that you hear on Dice Tower. You know what I mean? That was this was him in like a different setting. You know what I mean? And so it was the first time I had heard him really talk like that about, his journey and like what they do and everything. And so I found that really insightful.
If you read up on him, and I'm not going to kind of mention some of it, but there's a lot of breadth there, even kind of tangentially to the board game industry that I would have loved to get into. But I mean, there's sometimes you get too personal. I find with all the guests, for me, the hook of that podcast is just the people. I like learning people's stories, right? Like when you're on the podcast, the first half of the podcast is just talking about you and what do you do for a day job and how does that impact board games and how'd you get it's a weird thing, like the board game hobby. Like anybody watching right now or anybody in this industry, when you talk to people about board games that aren't in the industry, what do they say? They say, well, you mean like Monopoly?
Right.
Risk? Like just helping them understand how big and loving, quite frankly, this industry is. It is a big love fest. It's the only industry where you have competitors literally actively trying to help each other. Yeah. Right? Like it is an amazing industry. And there's a lot of personal stories. And what I get a kick out of every week is like how like I know how I got in, but how did you get in? Mm-hmm. I want to understand that story because I find that interesting. And that gets into people's characters and it gets into their struggles with life. And some people, it's kind of their last, they lost everything in jobs during COVID. And then this is something they did just to keep their sanity. And now this is what they're doing full time. Like there's so many amazing stories out there. That's what the first 15 minutes of the episode is about. The last 15 minutes, maybe we get into industry speak, talking about whatever it is, maybe they're plugging or learnings from things that they're involved with. And usually I try to find a nugget in there that I can personally learn from, but maybe the listeners will learn from as well. And that's what gets me going. And it's quick. It's 30 minutes in and out.
Yeah.
2 hours. I can't believe we've been talking for 2.5 hours, but
I know.
It's like 30 minutes, bang, bang. You're on your way to work. You get through an entire episode. On your way home, you listen to another episode.
Yeah. They're short and sweet. They're really good. You do a great job over there. I appreciate it. So, but yeah, so everybody, right? Like if you haven't yet, please check out Tin Robot. There's tons in their catalog, obviously, all different kinds of shapes, sizes, varieties of games, not just the space stuff. You got garden geckos, you got buddy drops, you got hamsters versus hippos. And if you don't want that cute stuff, go to Venus. Because there's at least a third game coming, so
there's 4 in the plan. So we got Civil War, 4 definitively planned. It might even expand past that, but Civil War is 100 years after Survivors. Kevin Levy. So again, shout out to him. He had a great game that we signed and then reskinned and adapted to this universe because it worked very well with what we were trying to do narratively. And that is 100 years in the future where now the cities are all self-sufficient. We're still not in contact with Earth. Still have the International Innovation Station circling the planet. However, everything is moved into factions, right? So every city is now fighting each other for the limited resources on the planet. The International Innovation Station has declared independence. They're selling weaponry to anybody that'll buy it. They don't care who they're selling it to. And it is a skirmish game. So you are literally fighting with each other, trying to attack you. So if people take that, you're attacking people, trying to take their station down. And it's very cool. After that, the title coming so far is called Uprising. And that will be along the lines of probably like a Clank. So a bit of a dungeon crawler, but it'll be co-op where you're trying to overthrow the people that are running the city because they are just mean and not passing the wealth down to the people below. And as the people, you try to rise up and take control back of the city. So a bit of a dungeon crawler, but again, all within this quick over an hour and a half max playtime. And again, different mechanism, different mechanics, but falling within the same cinematic universe.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I'm excited for it. I'm really glad that it's happening and it's working. Mike or Bob, you got anything else before we let James finish that beer and go to bed?
I don't think so.
Mike? Hit the thumbs.
Hit the thumbs. Yes. Thank you everybody for watching.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button, like they say.
Links to all James stuff in the description. Tin Robot and Board Game Binge. Check it all out.
Check it all out. If you got questions, reach out to James. If you don't know how to get a hold of him, reach out to us. We'll tell you. It's pretty easy. You either give one of his games a 5-star rating on BGG or preferably find him, reach out to him via Kickstarter or any of the other social medias. Sorry, James, I keep hitting that. That's
amazing.
It's just crazy to me.
I'll take the 5 stars, man. I'll take them.
All right, guys, this has been awesome. As always, y'all have been awesome. Really appreciate everybody here. And for the Board Game Rundown, I've been Tim,
Bob,
Mike,
and James from
We'll see you next week.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Later.
We'll see you guys.
Good job, Stonemeyer. A 7.3 repeating. Heating.